What if Renly declared for Stannis for the Iron Throne, not as a rival king, but as a brother bending the knee? Let's explore how that single choice could tear the war apart before it truly begins. In canon, the camp beneath Storm's End is where everything breaks. Renly laughs off Stannis' claim, the brothers stand at odds, and before dawn, a shadow with Stannis' face slips beneath the green silk of Renly's tent. A king dies without a battle, the Tyrells scramble for a new patron, and within weeks they ride into King's Landing at Tywin Lannister's side to save Joffrey's brittle crown. That fracture between brothers is the crack the Lannisters and Tyrells pour all their power into. But what if the crack never opens? Imagine the same parley, the same banners of the stag and crowned stag facing each other across the cold field. Yet a different answer. Renly still commands near 100,000 with his Reach allies. Still has Margaery Tyrell at his side. Still has the easy smile and the easy loyalty of half the realm. Stannis still has the law, the fleet, and the grim certainty that the throne is his by right. One has an army and charm. One has the claim and iron will. What happens when they choose to serve the same cause instead of drawing steel? This story follows that choice from the ground up. We will weigh the military math of a united Baratheon host bearing down on King's Landing before Tywin can turn his horse. And ask what becomes of the wildfire and the Blackwater when the defenders are outnumbered from the first trumpet. We will trace the political shockwaves in the capital when Cersei sees not one rebel banner, but two brothers marching together, with the Reach at their back and the Stormlands at their side. Does Joffrey ever sit safely on the throne at all? Beyond the city walls, the north still bleeds. Robb Stark is still crowned king by his river lords and bannermen. But how does the young wolf choose when the Lannisters are cornered faster, when the Baratheon brothers send ravens offering justice for Ned and peace for the realm? On that, we agree. Robb's path, the fate of the Riverlands, even the chance of a red wedding, all bend under this new alignment. From there, we will look further ahead, past the War of the Five Kings into the long winter. With Renly's charisma at court and Stannis' severity on the march, what kind of realm faces Daenerys Targaryen? Or the dead that walk in the snow? Very well, that is for later. For now, we return to the night before it all might change. The wind howls around Renly's pavilion outside Storm's End. Canvas snaps, armor creaks. The distant sea crashes against black stone. Renly lies awake beneath green and gold, listening to the storm and to the soft breathing of his sleeping knights. Tomorrow, he will meet his brother. Tonight, for the first time, he wonders what it would mean to kneel. Uwas, night in the Stormlands. Renly's doubt. Before dawn. The storm mutters around the camp like an old god half asleep. Torches hiss and gutter in the damp wind, throwing wild shadows over a forest of pikes and banners. Green stags of the Stormlands snap beside golden roses of Highgarden, a sea of cloth above a sea of men. Beyond it all, the black shape of Storm's End looms against the restless sky, and further still, the surf booms and retreats, tireless as war. 80, perhaps 100,000 souls lie scattered in the tents and lean-tos, wrapped in cloaks, pressed against horses, dreaming of gold or glory, or simply living to see the dawn. They sleep beneath Renly's colors, beneath Tyrell roses, believing their king certain of his throne. Why would they not? Their cook fires stretch farther than the eye can see. Their lords are the greatest in the Reach and Stormlands. Numbers make a man feel safe. Renly Baratheon lies awake, and canvas breathes above him with every gust. Beside the bed, a candle gutters low, scenting the air with melted tallow and hot wax. Loras sleeps in a chair, armor half unbuckled, hand still resting on the pommel of his sword, as if he might be called to tilt at dawn. Renly watches him for a moment, fondness and guilt warring quietly in his chest. Catelyn Stark's voice will not leave him. 4 kings, she had said, tearing the realm apart. A boy on the Iron Throne with no right to it. Yes, a brother with the lawful claim. Another brother who smiled and made light of it all. What if she is right? What if this splendid camp is not the beginning of his reign, but the start of the realm's ruin? He shifts on the feather mattress, staring at the tent pole as if it were the painted table in Stannis' war room. On one side, himself. Charm, easy laughter, a wife from the Reach, an army that adores him. On the other, Stannis. Law, iron will, a smaller host, a fleet, Wham, and a smuggler knight who looks at kings as if they were merely men. Davos would tell me the truth, Renly murmurs, almost amused at the thought. Stannis would hang him for it after. He pictures his older brother's face at dawn, the tight jaw, the disapproving frown, the way those pale eyes would rake over Renly's green cloak as if it were a personal insult. Stannis will speak of duty, of Robert's will, of the stain of bastardy on Joffrey's crown. He will say the word usurper. And for the first time, it will not be pointed at someone else. Renly closes his eyes. Margaery's smile rises before him, carefully schooled and endlessly patient. She is meant to be a queen, not the widow of a failed pretender. Loras, too, carries unspoken expectations in every admiring glance. That Renly will be the king who deserves the songs, the brother who proves the realm prefers love to law. But if he wins, truly wins, what then? He must still face Stannis. And he must still face the truth of Joffrey's birth. He must decide whether the throne he seizes is one he has any right to offer. The wind claws at the tent again. The candle flares, then steadies. Renly sits up, swinging his legs to the floor, feeling the cold seep through the rugs. "Very well," he whispers to the empty air. "Tomorrow, then." Tomorrow's parley does not have to be about crushing his brother. It can be about weighing him, testing how far Stannis will bend, how much he will bargain, whether that iron spine can be turned towards something greater than pride. Can a younger brother who craves love bring himself to follow the one man who may never offer it? Let's explore that question at dawn. Renly lies back down at last, not quite at peace, but no longer merely waiting for battle. The storm outside rages on. Inside, a decision hardens. He will go to the meeting not only as a rival king, but as a man searching for a way to serve a claim older than his own. If Stannis proves worthy, Renly tells himself, as sleep finally comes, then perhaps the realm does not need 4 kings at all. On that, we agree. Everything will turn on what is said when the brothers meet. Davos, at dawn. The road to Renly's pavilion. Dawn comes grudgingly to Stannis Baratheon. The sky over his camp is not the rose-gold blaze that Renly will wake to, but a low gray lid, salt-stained and heavy, pressing down on canvas and steel. The sea lies just beyond the dunes, unseen but ever present, its breath cold and sour on the wind. Out past the pale surf, black shapes ride at anchor. Stannis' fleet, tar reeking, tight-rigged, every line in its place. On the shingle, his army mirrors his ships, fewer banners, more discipline. No bright roses or prancing stags here, only the crowned stag of Baratheon, the fiery heart of the Red God. It is in the hard faces of men who have served through siege and famine. Mail is patched, shields plain, but the ranks are straight. They move like pieces in a game Stannis has already played out in his mind. Ser Davos Seaworth would have preferred to stay with the ships, where the rhythms of tide and oar made sense to him, but his king has ordered a small party ashore. So Davos rides now beside Stannis, cloaks snapping in the sea wind as they crest a low rise, and the world explodes into color. Renly's camp sprawls across the green like a tourney that has swallowed an army. Silk banners ripple in every hue of Reach and Stormlands, 1,000-colored cloth against the washed-out sky. Gold-tipped lances glitter, cook fires smoke with the fat of fresh meat. Where Stannis' host is a knife, Renly's is a festival. Davos feels the numbers like a weight in his gut. 80,000, maybe more, with Tyrell knights thick as reeds along a riverbank. Stannis has perhaps a quarter of that. If this parley fails, he thinks, they will be washed away like driftwood in a storm. What if one wrong word here drowns not only their claim, but the last lawful hope of the realm? Stannis rides ahead, jaw clenched so tight, Davos can see the muscles jump beneath his beard. The king's eyes move over the camp with open disdain, the golden armor on Renly's guards, polished bright as a crown, the painted pavilions, each larger than a ship's great cabin. The laughter rolling across the field, as if no man here expects to die. Feasting before the battle, Stannis mutters. My brother always did like a pageant more than a plan. Yet his allies like the pageant, Davos answers quietly, and they may yet serve your throne if he bends the knee. Stannis snorts, but does not rebuke him. If he remembers, he has a brother at all. There is something under the iron in his voice, Not softness, Stannis has none to offer, but a thin, yet dangerous thread of hope. If Renly will back the elder brothers right, if the Stormlands and the Reach march under one true king, King's Landing will fall before Tywin can so much as cross the Blackwater. No Baratheon civil war, no split banners. One hammer blow instead of two dulled edges. Let's explore what that single choice might buy them, Davos thinks, though he would never speak the words aloud. They pass between ranks of green-cloaked guards, spears lift. Old banners snap in the morning gust, the golden rose of Tyrell twining beside the stag of Baratheon as if the decision were already made. Renly's great pavilion rises ahead, striped green and gold, ropes humming like harp strings in the wind. Davos swings down from his saddle. His boots sink into the damp earth, and for a heartbeat, he feels the whole weight of the realm pressing there with him. If peace is to be won, it will be hammered out beneath that canvas. If not, the field around them will drink more blood than any sea. He looks once at his king's rigid back as Stannis strides toward the opening flap. Very well, Davos murmurs to himself. On that, we agree. The guards part. The tent's mouth yawns dark as a cave. Davos follows Stannis inside, knowing that whatever is said between brothers now will decide not only this war, but the fate of every war still to come. The parley. Rewritten, Renly opens with a question. The air inside Renly's pavilion is thick with torch smoke and rose oil, a strange mix of court and campaign. Green and gold banners stir faintly above polished armor and sharpened steel. Outside, an army of near 100,000 waits. Inside, only two brothers matter. Renly stands in his gleaming green armor, antlered helm tucked under one arm, every inch the bright young king his allies want the realm to see. Stannis faces him in plain mail, dark and unadorned, as if he has come not to parley but to pass sentence. Between them, Catelyn Stark watches like a judge, the weight of the North and Riverlands in her steady gray eyes. Around the edges, Tyrell knights and Baratheon men-at-arms bristle. Hands drift toward sword hilts. One wrong word, and this tent becomes the first grave of a civil war. What if the first word is not the one anyone expects? Renly breaks the silence. Brother, he says, all voice-light but not mocking, if the realm named you king and I your sword, would you take it? It lands like a thrown spear. Even the torches seem to crackle more sharply. Stannis' jaw tightens, already bracing for jest. You come to jeer? He snaps. You sit in my seat, wear a crown that is mine by law, and now you play at riddles? Renly does not smile. That, more than any speech, makes Stannis falter. No riddle, Renly answers. A question. Robert's gone. Joffrey is no true son of his. And you know it. I know it. Half the realm whispers it over their cups. But whispers won't keep Lannister claws off the throne. Catelyn's gaze flicks between them. She remembers dead men in Winterfell's Godswood, dead men on the Green Fork. How many more if these two cannot agree? Stannis steps closer, anger his armor against confusion. My claim is not in doubt. By all the laws of men, the Iron Throne is mine. Yet you raise an army in the Stormlands, steal my bannermen, and set yourself up as king. Now you speak of serving? Renly lifts his helm, turning the antlers so the candlelight runs along the gilded tines. I speak of winning. You have the better claim. I have the bigger army. Together, we march on King's Landing before Tywin can move his pieces. Apart, we give the Lannisters time to bind the Reach, the Westerlands, the capital, all in one knot of gold and blood. Your bigger army is bought with roses and feasts, Stannis says. My fleet, my discipline, that is what will break the city. Yet even as he speaks, he hears the numbers. 80,000, perhaps more, against his meager host. Let's explore that, shall we? Renly counters softly. You strike alone, you die alone on the Blackwater, if the stories are true. I strike alone, I wear a crown, while the realm burns on 3-4 fronts. Robb in the north, Balan at sea, Lannisters in the capital. How many kings can Westeros survive? The question hangs there, heavier than any threat. Catelyn finally speaks. My lords, every day you delay, Lannister power grows. Joffrey sits the throne, and my daughters sit in his court. On that, we agree, Stannis almost says. Instead, he grinds out, you would yield? Just so? Renly's mouth quirks, a flash of the old wryness. Not just so. I offer terms. Margaery as your queen. The Tyrells as your strongest allies. I as your hand, my Stormlands sworn to serve your cause. You take the throne you're owed? Ye brother, without spilling Baratheon blood on Baratheon steel. He lets the vision hang before Stannis like a banner in a strong wind. Very well, Renly finishes quietly. Will you take what is already yours, if I place it in your hand? Law versus love. Hammering out the terms of alliance. Stannis does not reach for the vision Renly offers. He reaches for the hilt of certainty instead. What if this is another of your jests, he says at last. His voice is low, yet rough as the stone walls around them. Another tourney of smiles and empty words. Is this a trick, Renly? A stalling tactic while you whisper in Highgarden? Renly spreads his hands. The candlelight catches on his golden antlered crown, the very symbol he is offering to set aside. Brother, if I wish to stall, I would stall with feasts, not with you. I will declare for your claim, in the morning, before my lords, before the Tyrells. My banners of the Stormlands and the Reach will march under your name. I will serve as your hand, not your rival. The waters around Storm's End are crisp and choppy outside, but in the chamber the air is tight and still. Stannis would have preferred a battlefield to this, but the realm is not one with swords alone. It is one with oaths he does not trust. You will stand, Stannis presses, before your host and name me king. You will name Joffrey bastard-born. You will bend the knee. If we must make a show of it, we will, Renly answers lightly, though his eyes are careful. I will kneel. I will call you my king. I will ride beside you when your army takes the throne you are owed. Let's explore how much more submission you require. Stannis does not rise to the barb. Terms, he says instead. You spoke of Margaery. There it is, the iron spike in the soft offer. Margaery must be queen, Renly says, the jest gone. Not merely your ally, your queen. The Tyrells did not raise their spears for Selyse Florent. They raised them for a rose on the throne. The words strike harder than any blow. Stannis sees Selyse's pinched face, hears her fervent prayers. Lawful wife, lawful marriage. To set her aside feels like tearing a page from the seven-pointed star. Davos shifts at the edge of the room. And Princess Shireen, my lord, he ventures. If you put aside the queen and take Lady Margaery, what of the girl's rights? Catelyn's brow furrows. You would make a second queen while the first yet lives. How will the realm read that, Lord Stannis? What will it say of your justice and your heir? Justice. He clings to the word like a drowning man to wreckage. Shireen is my blood, he says. She remains my heir. No Tyrell will unseat her. Yet, even as he speaks, he knows how lords talk, how quickly they would whisper for a Baratheon son of Margaery's body. Renly steps closer, lowering his voice. Keep Shireen as heir, put it in writing, name it before the Septon and the lords. On that, we agree. But without Margaery as queen, there is no Tyrell army at your back, no gold from the Reach, no bread for King's Landing when you take it. Stannis' jaw works. Then I demand oaths, ironclad. You will swear by the seven, by your honor, by your life, and your declaration must be public and immediate. And I, Renly counters, demand that you trust me long enough to win the Tyrells. If I declare for you before I have their buy-in, my offer dies in the same breath. Will you have a brother and the Reach for allies, or neither? The sea batters the cliffs beyond Storm's End, a dull thunder beneath their silence. Stannis stares at the man who would give him a realm and take a wife, a certainty, and half his sleep in return. Very well. But which oath, which sacrifice does he choose first? The answer will decide whether King's Landing falls in a season or the realm burns for years. Catelyn's interjection. A stark voice of the realm. Catelyn Stark watches the brothers in silence, the roar of the sea and the murmur of their quarrel blending into one dull, relentless sound. Storm's End is stone and salt and wind, but all she can see are green fields in the Riverlands going black with fire. Renly leans back in his chair, fingers drumming, bull already weighing which crown sits straighter. Stannis stands rigid, jaw clenched, as if the very word compromise were a blade turned inward. Between them lies a painted table of the realm. In her mind, another map overlays it. Burned farms, butchered small folk, her son's banners riding hard in the rain. "My lords," she says, and the word tastes bitter. "Every hour you argue over which brother is king, Tywin Lannister's riders cross another river. The trident runs red while you debate whose claim shines brighter. The wind claws at the shutters. Renly's smile flickers, then returns, softer. Lady Stark, the realm requires a settled throne. Better we decide here than on some bloody field, surely." His tone is light, but his eyes search hers, looking for the angle, the offer. "There are already 4 kings," Catelyn answers. "Robb in the north, Joffrey in King's Landing, you 2. She lets the words hang. 4 kings mean 4 wars. How many harvests can the realm survive that? How many sons? What if they truly do not understand, she wonders, what their banners cost the small folk who must feed their army? Stannis' mouth tightens. The boy in King's Landing is no king. Yet there is a grudging respect in his gaze. She speaks of law and fire both. "Names on parchment do not stop swords," she replies. "But 2 Baratheon brothers, 1 throne, 1 army, that could. Crush the Lannisters quickly, before Tywin can burn another village in the Riverlands. Then perhaps you speak with the North as victors, not supplicants." Her voice roughens on the last word. Renly's gaze drops to the painted lions clustered around the capital. For a heartbeat, his usual jest dies. "To be remembered as the king who ended the war, not just won it," he muses. "There is a certain charm in that." The irony is quiet now, turned inward. Stannis hears something else. Law, then force. Order restored, if he can endure the insult of sharing the stage. "The realm must have 1 king," he says, but the words are less rigid. Yet, a united host would serve that end. On that, we agree. His eyes seem to admit, if not his tongue. Pattern breaks like a wave against rock. "Ask yourselves this," Catelyn says, stepping closer to the table. "When the singers remember House Baratheon, will they tell of brothers who saved the realm together, or brothers who tore it apart over which man wore the crown? The question hangs between them, heavier than any mailed fist. Let's explore the price of either answer. The room itself seems to whisper, as the sea hammers the cliffs and the painted lions wait. Very well, Catelyn thinks. They have heard, but what will they choose? Stannis bends, but does not break. The silence stretches until it frays. The wind claws at the tent walls, and Renly watches his brother's jaw work, the muscle jumping like a trapped thing. Stannis does not answer Catelyn. He answers the storm inside his own skull. What if I bend? What if I yield my pride and lose my crown by inches instead of steel? The thought tastes like ash. He sees Selyse's thin, fervent face, hears the brittle pride in her voice when she spoke of being queen. To set her aside for a Tyrell girl with roses in her hair is an insult he would never have offered on his own. And yet the realm does not move for his marriage. It moves for armies. Outside, 80,000 men drink and laugh beneath Renly's banners. Inside, Stannis counts, as he always does. His smaller host, his fleet, his discipline, ships and order. They mean little if they are drowned beneath Reachman numbers. Law means even less if no one lives to see it upheld. Speak, brother, Renly prompts softly. Or must I have Maester Cresson brought back from the grave to advise you? Davos shifts at Stannis' shoulder. The smuggler would have preferred to stay silent, but his king's eyes flicker toward him, and that is an order in itself. My lord, Davos says, voice low. Better a living king with a compromised marriage than a dead claimant with an unblemished sense of justice. Your fleet, your Stormlands men, they're sharp, but we need more swords. Let his offer serve you. Stannis' mouth thins. He hates the truth more than the flattery he never hears. You would have me trust the reach. I would have you win, Davos replies, then teach them why you deserved it. Let's explore the bargain, Stannis thinks, though he would never use such words aloud. Slowly he turns back to Renly. Very well, he says. The words drop like stones. You will give me more than smiles and banners. I will have a public, unequivocal declaration from you. Yea, before your lords, before the Tyrells. You will name me king, and name your own claim false. Renly's eyes narrow, then brighten with something like amusement. Dramatic, I approve. Written oaths, Stannis presses on. From Mace Tyrell and every lord who rides with you. They will bind themselves to my throne, not to your person. Marjorie will be queen, but Shireen remains my heir. There will be no talk of setting her aside. On that, we agree. Renly considers the shape of that future. Not a laughing queen from Highgarden, a shy princess with a claim no one outside this tent truly fears. And himself, not cast aside, but placed at the very heart of power. And me, he asks, what am I in this new order? You will be hand, Stannis says. Not co-king, not second crown. You will serve as my right hand, and you will rule the court while I rule the realm. Relief flickers across Renly's face, chased at once by calculation. Hand of the king. The court, the charm, the reach's love, all flowing through him. If Stannis holds the throne by law and war, Renly can hold everything else by smiles and favors. For now, the long game can wait behind a brother's embrace. What if this is the best either of us will ever be? He murmurs, then smiles. Very well, your grace. I will kneel in the morning, and the roses will kneel with me. Stannis steps forward. His hand extends, not warmly, but with the iron certainty of a drawn sword. And were it then let it be the last time Baratheon steel is turned against Baratheon blood, he says. Their hands meet. Outside, the storm breaks, and somewhere far to the east, a red woman feels the future shift and reaches for her god, wondering which king she has truly lost. The shadow that never strikes. The storm that breaks over the camp doesn't break the Baratheons. Rain drums on canvas as the brothers leave the tent side by side, guards parting in confusion. In the canon timeline, as this is the walk Renly never finishes. Here, the air is only wet wool and torch smoke. No taste of sorcery, no unseen thing sliding through stone. What if the most infamous murder of the war simply never happens? Far from the parley, in a smaller, darker pavilion, the Red Woman stares into a shallow bronze bowl. The water ripples with each thunderclap. She has seen a king in darkness, a crown of shadow and flame, a brother's life snuffed out like a candle. Yet now the shapes blur. The path that had been so sharp in the flames is clouded, as if some unseen hand has drawn ash across the glass. Renly still lives, she says. The words taste wrong. Stannis stands rigid by the entrance, rain steaming from his cloak. He lives as my bannerman. He has bent the knee. The Tyrells will serve. Why should that trouble you? Because the night still gathers, Melisandre answers. Because the other powers do not sleep. Your enemies are many, your grace. One brother's life, and freely given to the Lord of Light, could have won this war before it truly began. Davos shifts at the flap, half in shadow, half in lamplight. He would have preferred to stand on a windy deck than in this stifling tent, but his king has summoned him, and so he listens. With respect, my lady, he says, we now have near 100,000 men between the Stormlands and the Reach, a fleet in the bay, allies with grain and gold. What cursed shortcut do we still need? Melisandre's eyes flash. You speak of numbers as if the game were so simple. The throne is forged in blood and fire. The usurper boy in King's Landing has lions at his back, and darker things besides. The Lord of Light showed me a shadow with a man's face. And the Lord of Light did not show you this alliance, Davos cuts in, more sharply than before. That is the pattern interrupt, the smuggler daring to snap at the priestess. Maybe the fire is not the only place truth lives. Yeah, maybe winning the realm means not murdering the one brother who just saved it from tearing itself in half. Stannis' jaw works. He is a man who has always trusted law, not luck, duty, not visions. Yet he cannot deny what stands outside his tent. Renly's green-cloaked knights drinking beside his own grim men, the Tyrell banners snapping beside the crowned stag. If I am the rightful king, he says slowly, my claim should not need kinslaying to stand. Melisandre steps closer, voice low. Me, destiny does not wait on your scruples. Great victories demand great sacrifices. Very well, Stannis replies. Then let the first sacrifice be mine. I will forgo your shadow. He looks to Davos. We will take King's Landing with ships and steel, not sorcery. On that we agree? Davos bows, relief and fear warring in his chest. On that we agree, your grace. And so, the shadow is never born. No black thing slips from Melisandre's body. In no impossible assassin glides beneath Renly's tent flap. Renly walks out into the rain alive, laughing with Loras, promising Margaery a crown that will now come through law instead of usurpation. In the Tyrell camp, no king dies in a swirl of terror to drive them into Lannister arms. Let's explore what a united Baratheon Tyrell host does next, when the war for the throne is fought by men in the light instead of monsters in the dark. Renly's public submission. A spectacle for the banners. The rain breaks by morning. Clouds peel back from Storm's End like a curtain, revealing a pale, hard sky over a sea of tents and steel. The fields outside the castle are a riot of color. Golden roses of Highgarden, snapping beside crowned stags of the Stormlands. Tyrell green and Baratheon black and gold rippling together in the chill wind. The air smells of wet canvas, oiled mail, and horses grown restless from waiting. Today, they are told, their king will speak. But which king? Renly rides out first, all emerald silk and polished antlers, the very picture of easy confidence. Beside him, more rigid in the saddle, is Stannis in plain, dark plate, his jaw clenched as if the very pageantry offends him. Behind them roll the lords of the Reach and Stormlands, an army of banners flowing like a river down the slope to a hastily raised wooden platform. Sir Loras guides his white mare close, in eyes flicking between the brothers. He would have preferred a simple charge and a simple victory, but his king has chosen words instead of swords. Margaery waits near the front ranks, flanked by Tyrell cousins, her cloak trimmed in sable, her face composed. She studies Stannis the way another woman might examine a jewel, weighing its flaws and worth. Renly dismounts in one smooth motion and strides up onto the platform. The murmur of thousands dims. He lets it hang for a heartbeat, in savoring the stage. Then he turns, not to the crowd, but to Stannis. "Brother," he says, voice carrying over the host, "I have called these banners in my name. I have worn a crown while you nursed your anger on Dragonstone. What if I told you this ends today?" He drops to one knee, armor creaks. A gasp ripples outward like a stone thrown into a pond. Reach lords stare, hands frozen on sword hilts. Storm lords glance at one another, uncertain. Loras's fingers tighten on his reins. And pride burns in his chest that Renly can bend so low for honor, but jealousy twists there too. He had wanted his lover to be the king, not the herald of another. "I, Renly of House Baratheon," Renly calls, kneeling in the mud, "do here proclaim Stannis, my elder brother, the rightful king of Westeros by law and blood. My crown I set aside, my army, my Stormlands, and my Tyrell allies I offer to serve his cause. The roses of the Reach and the stags of the Stormlands now stand behind the one true claim." Margaery's smile is small and sharp. Queen to Renly or queen to Stannis, she will still sit beside the throne. The path has shifted, not vanished. Stannis steps forward, every movement stiff, as if he is walking into a trap rather than a triumph. He would have preferred a quiet oath in a dark hall, but the realm loves a spectacle. And Renly insisted. "On that, we agree." As he thinks sourly, "The realm must see. Rise, Renly," he says, voice flat but loud. "You have done your duty at last." He turns to the host, and something in him hardens into iron. "Lords of the Reach, lords of the Stormlands, you know my claim. Joffrey is no true Baratheon. The Lannisters have lied to you, murdered your king, and bled this realm for their profit. Very well. No more." His gauntleted hand cuts through the air toward King's Landing. "I promise justice. I promise punishment for Lannister treachery. Those who stand with me will keep their lands, their honors, and gain more when the lions fall. Those who stand against their rightful king will answer for it." For a heartbeat, silence. Then Lord Tarly is first to move, grim and practical. His banner dips, the huntsman lowering before rising again, beneath a hastily raised stag and flame of Stannis. One by one, others follow. golden roses bow. Or then climb again beneath the red heart of the Lord of Light and the crowned stag. An ocean of sigils bends, then reforms under a single name, Baratheon. Messengers are already mounting, spurring their horses toward King's Landing, toward the Twins, toward the Eyrie. Word will outrun the army. Renly has knelt. The Reach and Stormlands march as one. A united Baratheon front is coming. But how will Cersei, Tywin, and even Robb Stark answer when they realize the war has changed before the first great battle is fought? Let's explore that turning of the tide next. Tyrell calculus, roses, twining around a new crown. The war shifts on parchment before it shifts on the field. While ravens race ahead of the united Baratheon host, another flock is already beating its way toward Highgarden, heavy with news that will bruise Mace Tyrell's pride and sharpen Olenna's interest. In the Reach, and banners of green and gold snap above a sea of orchards and vineyards. Mace strides through his solar in a brocade doublet, already rehearsing how singers will praise King Renly, son-in-law of Highgarden. The words taste sweet. Then the raven comes. Renly has bent the knee. Stannis Baratheon is to be king. Mace blusters first, of course. My armies, my grain, my gold, and I am to bow to that sour brother? His vanity flares at the thought that all his careful backing of Renly's claim has been undercut in a single kneel. Olenna only snorts, fingers tapping the letter. Your sour brother now has the better claim, and our entire army, you great oaf. And he intends to marry our Marjorie. Tell me, is a legally unassailable king such a dreadful prospect? What if this is in truth an upgrade? In one stroke, Marjorie keeps her path to the throne. But the man she will call husband now sits on far firmer ground than Renly ever could. No whispers of usurpation, no doubts in Sept or small folk tavern. A queen of roses upon a crown of iron law. Olenna sees it at once. The Reach does not lose a queen. It gains a more stable regime to entwine itself around. The Tyrells will serve, yes, but on terms. We will want assurances, she says. Autonomy in the Reach, no meddling with our harvest levies. And offices, real ones, not pretty titles. So, the quiet negotiations begin, carried by fast ships and faster quills. Stannis, urged by Renly and Davos, sends back a blunt offer. The Reach will hold broad sway over its own affairs. A Tyrell man, perhaps Mace himself, perhaps a pliable cousin, will be named Master of Coin. A trusted Reach lord, learned and safe, will sit as Master of Laws, and, crucially, there will be no punishment for having first backed Renly's banner. Very well, Olenna murmurs when the second raven comes. He has more sense than his reputation allows. On that, we agree. But not every rose bends so easily. In the bustle of the camp, Sir Loras Tyrell moves like a blade drawn halfway from its sheath. He rides with Renly's household guard, yet his eyes track Stannis' grim, humorless figure whenever the king passes. Loras would have preferred Renly's crown, Renly's court, Renly's laughter echoing off the walls of the Red Keep. Now he must watch his lover ride half a step behind another man. Do you trust him? Loras asks one night, voice low. As Renly loosens his armor, the canvas walls flap with the wind. Outside, the army settles. He is my brother, Renly answers, and the rightful king. That will have to be enough. Loras's jaw tightens. Enough for duty, perhaps. But what happens when Stannis, with his iron sense of order, begins to sideline the charming younger brother who brought the Reach and Stormlands to his cause? That seed of doubt will matter later, when tempers flare in the capital and every slight cuts twice as deep. For now, the Tyrells move. Ravens fly from Highgarden to Old Town, to Brightwater, to the Arbor. Lords are ordered to muster fully under Stannis' banner. Grain stores are opened, fleets prepared, roads cleared. And each sealed letter is another door closing on the future Lannister-Tyrell alliance. In this timeline, no desperate Cersei will have a Reach bride to save her son's throne. The Roses have chosen their crown early, and they are already winding tight around it. But how will the Lannisters answer, stripped of that vital marriage, when a united Baratheon-Tyrell army appears before King's Landing's walls? Let's explore that siege next. 8. The new war math. 100,000 men for one king. The Roses have chosen their crown early, and now we need to count the thorns. What if we strip this moment of pageantry and look at the cold numbers? Let's explore the new war math that every lord in the realm will be whispering over their wine. Renly's green and gold host is the great weight on the scales. With the full strength of the Reach behind him, he commands between 80 and 100,000 men. Tyrell spears, Bree, Florent, and Tarly veterans, bright knights who have never yet lost a tourney or a war. To that, we add Stannis' sterner, smaller core. Perhaps 15,000 hard Stormlands men and Dragonstone retainers, drilled and disciplined, plus the true terror of his cause. A fleet of 200 ships, from Valerion war galleys to Davos's lean black cogs. On parchment, the comparison is brutal. The Lannisters can muster around 35 to 40,000 with Tywin in the field. All another 12 to 15,000 between the City Watch, household guards, and crown forces in King's Landing. Even if every Red Lion answers at once, they are badly outnumbered. And in this timeline, there is no Reach relief sailing up the Blackwater to save them. On the windy cliffs above Storm's End, Renly leans over a painted map as banners snap and crack in the salt air. So, he says lightly, one king with 100,000 men against one boy with half that and a bad temper. Ooh, I like these odds, brother. Stannis' jaw works. He does not smile. You like them because you cannot count ships, he answers. His finger traces the coast from Dragonstone to the Blackwater Rush. By land and sea both. We close the jaws before Lord Tywin can march to his whelp's rescue. This is the true shift. Tywin's field army, lurking in the west and Riverlands, is suddenly outnumbered and outflanked. If he turns east, he risks being caught between Robb Stark and the Riverlands and a united Baratheon Tyrell hammer sweeping up from the south. If he holds back, King's Landing faces a siege by land and sea before he can reinforce it safely. Which does the old lion choose when both paths stink of defeat? Roles crystallize quickly. Stannis is king and supreme commander, the hard spine of the cause. Renly accepts the chain of hand. Thar, his easy charm and Reach alliances turned into a political shield for his brother's harsher justice. I will smile, he tells him, so you don't have to. On that we agree, Stannis almost says, but only grunts. Sir Loras rides at the head of the vanguard, given a leading battlefield command that lets his glory serve the throne instead of distracting from it. Davos, who would have preferred to stay in the relative safety of smuggling onions, now oversees naval operations and the lifeblood of the army, grain from the Reach, siege engines from the Stormlands, powder and pitch for whatever tricks the Blackwater might demand. Yet beneath the neat assignments, a tension hums. Stannis favors direct, punishing strikes. Break the gate, break the lawbreakers, end the war. Renly prefers slow, overwhelming pressure, the grand encirclement, the show of such force that the enemy bends before a single sword is drawn. That which philosophy wins when the fleet sights the city's walls? Very well, Stannis decides at last, staring east toward Dragonstone. We move now, before the Lannisters can find new allies. The immediate objective is simple, and terrifying in its simplicity. March and sail on King's Landing at once, choke the Blackwater with Baratheon sails, ring the city in Tyrell green and Stormlands banners, lash and tear Joffrey from the Iron Throne before Cersei can bargain for a Reach bride or raise the defenses fully. But as the great host begins to move, armor clattering, ships creaking, ravens taking wing, another question rises like smoke over the capital. How will King's Landing, unready and divided, face a storm coming from both sea and shore? And what hidden fires inside those walls are about to be unleashed when that storm finally breaks? Wenny's King's Landing. Here's the news: panic in the Red Keep. The first raven reaches the Red Keep before the dawn bells. Its wings are slick with sea mist, its claws clutching a roll of parchment sealed in the green and black wax. By the time the third raven arrives, the rookery is in uproar and the chill that began in the tower has spread down into the heart of the castle. In the small council chamber, candles gutter in the early light as Varys lays the message before Cersei. The queen's fingers are steady when she breaks the seal, but her eyes are not. Renly Baratheon, she reads, has acknowledged the lawful claim of his brother Stannis, first of his name, true king of the Andals and the first men. The words hang there like smoke. Their banners are joined. Her plan had been simple in its cruelty. Let the brothers tear each other apart in the Stormlands while she tightened her grip on the throne. Now, instead of two feuding rivals, she faces one united king with an army drawn from the Stormlands and the Reach, and a royal fleet besides. The very allies she meant to court with a marriage bed have already chosen a different queen. What if they quarrel? She says, almost to herself. Renly is vain, Stannis is iron, brothers crack. But even as she speaks, she can hear the discipline in Stannis' name, see the bright, eager ranks that march for Renly. Together, they are not a quarrel, they are a storm. Tyrion plucks the parchment from the table once she's done, eyes flicking over the neat, formal script. He does not bother to hide his grimace. Renly's host alone had numbered close to 100,000 with Tyrell backing. Stannis' own army and ships may be fewer, but they are organized, hardened, and now they serve a single crown. So, he murmurs, our best offer was never made. The Tyrells have chosen their king without asking our leave. He begins to count in his head, lips moving. How many men remain in the city? How many sellswords can gold truly buy when a lawful Baratheon claim marches with bread-rich allies at its back? The Battle of Blackwater, he once imagined, wildfire on the tide, a green wall against a fractured enemy, dissolves. There may be no desperate gamble on the river now, only a slow tightening noose. Joffrey does not see a noose, he sees insult. They dare name another king while I sit the Iron Throne? His voice cracks, then sharpens. I'll have their heads, all of them. I'll put Stannis' on a spike and make his brother watch. He kicks at the leg of the council table, as if that could shatter an army. Tyrion watches him with that tired, measuring look. Very well, he says softly. Shall I ride out alone and fetch them for you, your grace? The boy king hears only the words, not the irony. The realm hears the tremor beneath. The council gathers in full before midday. Littlefinger runs a hand along the back of a chair, or already thinking of ships and escape routes. Varys folds his hands, speaking of bread stores and frightened small folk. Cersei talks of wildfire and closed gates. The options are laid out like blades on a table. Flee to Casterly Rock and abandon the capital, bend the knee in some desperate poison diplomacy, or brace for a siege that their walls might endure, but their people will not. Let's explore one more question before the storm truly breaks. When every road leads to ruin, which path does a proud lion choose? On that we agree. The next choice will decide not just who wears the crown, but whether King's Landing itself survives the coming Baratheon tide. March of the Roses and Stags, the road to the capital. Tywin's choice hardens in the capital's smoke, but far to the south, another choice is already in motion. The march begins at dawn, mist clings to the fields as a river of men and horses moves north, banners rippling like a painted storm. The golden roses of Highgarden, stags crowned and rampant, the fiery heart of the Lord of Dragonstone, all threaded together above an army that stretches from hedgerow to horizon. Supply wagons creak and groan, oxen snort, and camp followers trail behind in a ragged, colorful tale that seems to go on for miles. Renly rides near the front beneath a green silk canopy, laughing with knights of the Reach and Stormlands as if this were a tourney procession rather than a march on a city. He veers from the road to visit tents when they halt, tasting stews, praising banners, calling men by name. Each jest, each easy word, lifts shoulders and straightens backs. This is the king they chose, and he looks the part. Stannis rides without canopy, his plain armor dull beside the Tyrell splendor. He studies the column instead of admiring it. Where Renly sees pageantry, he sees exposed flanks, straggling foragers, gaps in the scout's screen. Sir Davos Seaworth would have preferred a smaller, tighter host, but his lord and king insists they make this unwieldy mass move like a sword thrust, not a parade. What if Tywin is already in the field? Stannis mutters as they pause atop a low rise, watching the dust of their own advance smear the sky. Every day we dawdle is a day he steals. Mace Tyrell only smiles, reins in one fat destrier, and pats its neck. Let him look, your grace. Let all the realm see who truly holds the strength. Yeah, an army like this should not creep. It should arrive. Renly tilts his head, amused. My brother would have us run, Mace. He fears the lion will slip away. I fear nothing, Stannis answers, jaw tight. I count bread, arrows, days. We have enough for a swift strike, not a wandering harvest. Here the first fishers show. Renly and Mace favor a slower, more secure advance. Castles along the way properly cowed. Ravens sent ahead to announce that the rightful king comes with roses at his side. Yet Stannis and Davos press for speed, arguing that King's Landing must fall before Tywin can gather the Westerlands and sweep down on their rear. On that, we agree. Davos thinks silently with his king. Time is their truest enemy. Feeding near 100,000 mouths, gnaws at every discussion. Grain wagons lag, tempers fray when proud Reach Knights jostle with Stannis' hard men from Dragonstone and the Stormlands. Fights break out over forage, over insults. It's over whose lord's claim is older or purer. Renly drifts through these quarrels like a calming wind, turning duels into drinking contests, punishments into wagers. Stannis responds with lash and strict order, and the men learn there are two kinds of discipline in this host, one that charms and one that burns. Out at sea, the red wine and Valerian masts shadow the coast, trying to keep pace. Signal fires and ravens strain to hold land and fleet together. A storm or a Lannister sortie at the wrong moment could peel them apart. Let's explore how fragile that coordination truly is. One missed message, and half the army might find itself without bread or ships. Then, near Bitterbridge, a rider arrives at a gallop, horse-lathered, eyes wild. Tywin Lannister has broken from Harrenhal. His banners are moving south and east, faster than expected. Do they split this great host, detaching a hammer to hunt the lion in the open, or drive straight for the throne and leave a Lannister army prowling behind their backs? Renly smiles at the news. Stannis does not. Their next decision will decide whether this united march becomes legend, or the beginning of their undoing. Debating the hammer blow. Siege or field battle. First, the war tent is thick with heat and tallow smoke. Maps sprawl across the table, rivers and roads glistening under spilled candle wax. Outside, if the murmur of 100,000 men is a distant sea. Inside, 6 people will decide where that sea breaks. Stannis stands rigid over the map, jaw clenched, knuckles white on the table's edge. Renly lounges in a camp chair, green cloak spilling like a banner. Mace Tyrell dabs at his brow. Ser Loras leans over the rivers, eyes bright. Davos lingers in the shadows. Beside Mace, Olenna's sharp words arrive through a lean Tyrell cousin, who has been instructed exactly how much insolence to offer a king. What if we stop circling the choice and make it? Renly says lightly. The throne is there, Tywin is there. Which head do we strike first, brother? Stannis does not look up. The throne, he says. We march on King's Landing at once. Cut off the snake's head. Joffrey, Cersei, the whole brood. Take the city, take the mint, take the ravens. Then Tywin fights the realm. Not a boy on a chair. Mace snorts. Leave Lord Tywin Lannister at our backs with 20,000 hardened men? Madness. Better to smash him in the field and write a song about it. The Tyrell cousin inclines his head. Her Grace, the Queen of Thorns, believes lords remember who wins the great battles. A glorious victory over Tywin would show the realm which king truly deserves their loyalty. On that, we agree, Renly adds, smiling. Imagine it, brother. The line's broken on some riverbank. All Reach banners flying, Baratheon hammers finishing the work. The realm loves a spectacle. Stannis lifts his gaze at last. The realm should love law. Every day that bastard sits the throne, more lords accustom themselves to it. He signs decrees, grants lands, marries off allies. You would let him root himself while you chase songs? Loras bristles. And you would leave Tywin's army free to burn the Reach, the Stormlands. Takes the Riverlands as it pleases? His gauntleted finger taps the map near Harrenhal. He moves quickly. What if he falls on our supply lines while we sit before the walls? Davos steps forward, hating that he must speak, knowing he must. Character action, internal reluctance, all in one breath. My lords. Every day Joffrey wears that crown, he mints coin with his face. He pays sellswords. He sends ravens calling loyalists to his lawful cause. The window to name him usurper is closing. He points to the Blackwater, rough finger tracing the river's bend. Take King's Landing, and half the realm will decide they always doubted the boy. Fail to take it quickly, and men who waver now will swear they always believed in him. Pattern interrupt. Davos looks not at Stannis, but at Renly. And every day you delay, more lords remember you once claimed that same throne for yourself. Renly's smile fades, just a little. The hit lands. Oh, so we rush the city and trust Tywin to be courteous enough to wait his turn? Very well, Stannis says. Name me a battle where it is wise to leave your enemy his capital and his treasury. Silence. Only the candles hiss. The Tyrell cousin clears his throat. Her Grace would accept a compromise. March for King's Landing as His Grace Stannis desires, but detach a strong vanguard to shadow Lord Tywin. Keep his claws from our wagons, his scouts from our flanks. Mace brightens. Us 10,000 reach horse. Lord Randall, perhaps. They will hound him like dogs. Renly glances at Loras. Brother to brother, a wordless question passes. Loras nods, eager for the hunt. Let the city be our hammer, Renly concedes, and this vanguard the hand that keeps the lion from our throat. Stannis studies the map, then his brother. We drive on the capital, but if this detachment fails, Tywin will not write songs about it. Like, he will burn its bones into the earth. Davos feels a chill despite the heat. A smaller force racing ahead of a great army, stalking the most dangerous lord in the realm. What could possibly go wrong? Let's explore that next. Robb Stark's dilemma. A northern king watches the south. The chill of the river wind cuts through canvas and wool as easily as any blade. In Robb Stark's camp, the air smells of wet earth, horse sweat, and the iron tang of old blood. Men sharpen swords by torchlight, expecting another clash with Lannister scouts. Instead, a raven brings something far stranger. Catelyn stands beside her son as the letter is read, the words sounding almost unreal. Renly has bent the knee to Stannis. The Tyrell host marches under the fiery heart alongside the crowned stag. A single Baratheon army, with reach banners streaming, is driving on the throne together. Robb's jaw tightens. Renly was a king yesterday, he says. See, today he serves his brother? There is no Renly here to answer with a wry smile. No Stannis to mutter, very well, the law is the law. Only ink on parchment, and the knowledge that the South is no longer a chaos of 5 rival kings, but something harder to read. One lawful claim against the lions. Catelyn studies her son's face more than the letter. She remembers the boy who played with wooden swords in Winterfell's yard, and the young king who raised a real army in answer to Ned Stark's death. When you were crowned, she reminds him softly, you refused Renly's offer. You would not bend the knee to Stannis either. I gave my word, Robb answers. The young wolf paces the tent, cloak swirling, eyes flicking from map to map. The Twins, River Run, Casterly Rock. The North chose its king. I will not crawl back to the throne that murdered my father. But what if that throne changes hands? Catelyn's voice is gentle, but the question lands like a hammer. If Stannis takes King's Landing swiftly, if the Lannisters fall and the realm calls him king by law and by victory, must the North bleed alone? How many more sons of Winterfell must die to prove what is already won? The candles gutter as a draft slips through the tent. Robb looks at Grey Wind, dozing near the entrance, then back to the carved stone direwolf that marks his forces on the map. Pride pulls one way, pragmatism another. He has promised his bannermen freedom. It's sworn before gods and men to win a crown of snow and pine. Yet, if the Stormlands, the Reach, and the Royal Fleet all bend toward a single Baratheon, can the North truly stand against the whole realm? Stannis is no friend to the South, Catelyn presses. He is stern, but he keeps his word. If he breaks the lions and sits the throne, you might treat with him from strength, not weakness. Ask for the trident for your grandfather, the neck for your allies, the North to rule itself in all but name. That's better that than another red fork choked with dead. Robb hears it, not surrender, but a different kind of victory. He imagines sending an envoy instead of an army, oaths of mutual defense rather than endless raids. Yet he also sees the faces of Karstark and Umber, men who followed him as king, not as some southern lord's bannerman. Not yet, he decides at last. We finish what we began here. We break the Lannisters in the field, while Stannis breaks them in the capital. Then, if he wears the crown by right and by conquest, we speak of terms. Catelyn inclines her head. On that, we agree. Outside, horns sound as scouts return from the darkness. News from the south has shaken the board, but the next move will be made in the Riverlands. And as Robb Stark steps out into the night, neither he nor his mother yet knows which promise will prove more dangerous, the one he made to his bannermen, or the one he has just made to himself. Let's explore what happens when the lions learn they're being squeezed from both sides. Tywin on the back foot. The lion hunted. Tywin Lannister learns the truth not in a council chamber, but in a muddy field tent that smells of damp wool and horse sweat. A raven from King's Landing, another from the Reach. Renly has bent the knee. Stannis commands the Stormlands and the Tyrell host both. The brothers ride for the throne together. For a heartbeat, Tywin simply stares at the words. And Baratheon infighting had been his linchpin. Let the brothers bleed each other, then sweep in with a hardened Western army and a pliable boy king. Now, that careful edifice collapses in a few lines of cramped script. An exaggeration, one knight offers. They'll quarrel soon enough. Tywin folds the parchment once, very precisely. Very well, he says, tell me how we survive until then. Outside, the Riverlands lie trampled and smoking. Inside, his options narrow like a noose. If he marches hard for King's Landing, he risks everything. A united Baratheon Tyrell army could pin his host against the city's thin walls, crush him between garrison and besieger. Yet, if he turns west, abandoning the capital, he hands his enemies the king, the court, and the story they will tell the realm. Which loss is worse, his grandson, or the illusion that the Lannisters still rule? Tywin's mind, always political before it is paternal, begins to sort through desperate measures. What if he offers terms to Stannis? Recognition of the claim, a rich dowry, Lannister gold to serve a new king. Or perhaps the Tyrells can be tempted, as they were in truth. Joffrey for Marguerite, Tommen for some bright Tyrell cousin. A better offer than any Baratheon can make. And in the darkest corner of his thoughts, a colder calculation. Joffrey is only one lion. Casterly Rock is forever. If the boy must be sacrificed through a quiet surrender, through a marriage that leaves him a hostage rather than a king, then so be it. A living House Lannister in the West may matter more than a dead boy on a melted throne. While he thinks, he tightens his fist on the land he still holds. Orders go out to strip the Riverlands bare. Grain, cattle, timber, coin, everything that can move is sent west. Villages that once merely burned are now emptied. Men pressed into his army, boys taken as hostages. Lords given a choice between Lannister protection and Lannister punishment. Each act feeds Robb Stark's resolve. Each charred farmstead Catelyn hears of makes peace with the lions harder to offer, harder still to accept. The Tullys see not a lord at war, but an occupying king who will never leave. Then a pattern interrupt. Word reaches him that the Baratheon vanguard has halted to rebuild a river crossing instead of driving straight for the capital. A pause, a flaw. Tywin's eyes narrow. He will not dash himself against their strength. Instead, he shadows their advance, always just beyond their scouts. He watches for overextension, for quarrels between Stormlands lords and Reach knights, for the first sign that brothers who stand together might yet disagree. Let them come, he murmurs at last, turning his horse west of their line of march. The lion hunts from the tall grass, not the open road. Let's explore what happens when that patient hunter finally meets an army that refuses to break. Approaching the Blackwater, a very different battle looms. The patient hunter does not wait long. Within days, the united Baratheon Tyrell host spills out along the south bank of the Blackwater like a living wall. The river smells of mud and tar and salt, choked now with ships. Stannis' fleet rides at anchor in disciplined lines. Aury black sails and crowned stag banners snapping in the sea wind, while the green Tyrell standards bloom along the shore behind them. Fires spring up as far as the eye can see. The earth itself seems to have been claimed in the king's name. Scouts fan forward, cloaks snapping, hooves drumming on the hard-packed road. They ride close enough to King's Landing to count the crenels on the city walls. Signal fires blink between vanguard and main host. Though what if the Blackwater was never a desperate gamble in the dark, but a slow, suffocating hand closing in broad daylight? Renly rides the forward lines, bright in green and gold, laughing with lords of the Reach and Stormlands as if this were a tourney rather than a siege. Yet when he reins in on a low rise and sees the city crouch behind its walls, his smile thins. The red keep glows dull in the haze. The mudgate squats over the river like a clenched jaw. "Let them see us," he says, almost idly. "Every banner, every campfire. I want the small folk counting our tents until their eyes water." Stannis sits his horse beside him, jaw tight. He would have preferred to deploy by utility, not spectacle. But his brother's plan serves a colder purpose he cannot deny. A ring of steel around the city, a forest of banners on every horizon, will bleed the will to resist faster than any ram. "Encircle them," Stannis answers. "Cut the roads. No carts in or out, no food, no fodder. Though the fleet seals the river, they will yield or starve." "Starve the whole city?" Renly's tone is light, but his eyes search his brother's face. That is a hard offer for a king who wishes to serve the realm. "A short hunger now, or a longer war everywhere," Stannis replies. "You spoke of the throne, brother. This is its cost." "On that, we agree," Renly almost says, but he swallows the words. Instead, he turns, cloak swirling, and rides down the line, ordering a grand visible encirclement. Siege lines are marked with colored pennons. Engineers pace out distances for towers and rams. The Tyrells argue about the prettiest positions. The Stormlands lords argue about the strongest. Stannis merely demands the most efficient. Inside King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister limps along the battlements, watching the camps multiply. Each morning, there are more tents, more cookfires, more ships. The wildfire stores grow in the bowels of the city, but so does the fear. In canon, one he had a hope he did not dare name. Tywin racing east, the Tyrell roses perhaps turning red for Lannister gold. Here, there is only the cold arithmetic of walls versus an army that does not need a night assault. No chain laid across the river will matter against this many ships. No hidden green fire will scatter a fleet that can simply sit and wait while the city eats itself. "What if they just stay?" he mutters, fingers tracing the stone. "What if they do nothing clever at all?" Below, the streets buzz with rumor. Some still whisper that a friendly host will appear over the horizon, banners streaming, to save them as in some old song. Then, one gray dawn, people crowd the rooftops and see that the horizon itself has changed. From the sea to the western hills, the world beyond the walls is painted in stags and roses. Baratheon black and gold, Tyrell green and gold, Stormlands lords, Reach bannermen, an unbroken ring. No lion banners ride to meet them, and no new ally answers the city's silent plea. The realization moves through King's Landing like a chill. This time, no one is coming. And as the first siege engines rise on the south bank, another question begins to whisper through both camps. How long will Stannis Baratheon be willing to wait before turning from hunger to fire? Inside the walls, Tyrion's last gambits. Inside the walls, the war feels smaller and more suffocating. King's Landing stinks of fear and hot stone. And the bells are silent, the streets half empty. And from every vantage point, the same sight waits. A forest of Tyrell and Baratheon banners beyond the river. An army that does not move because it does not need to. In the Tower of the Hand, Tyrion Lannister studies that forest and counts. Not men, but hours. He shuffles parchments, snaps orders, drinks too much. Wildfire stores are checked and rechecked. Chain lengths measured, walls inspected. He snarls at lazy guards. I bullies Pycelle into useful advice, and spars with Varys over which gates will break first. Character action, then conflict. Tyrion would have preferred a war of whispers, but his brother is not here, and steel will speak louder than secrets. Cersei storms in and out of councils, demanding sorties, demanding hostages, demanding that someone, anyone, silence the rumors that the rightful king sits across the Blackwater. Joffrey plays at being a war king, in ordering heads on spikes and laughing when the small folk flinch. "Tell them we have wildfire," Cersei hisses. "Tell them Stannis will burn." "We do have wildfire," Tyrion answers. "But I'd rather not advertise that we plan to set half the realm on fire to keep your son on his throne." "Very well. If fire cannot win this alone, perhaps marriage can." He sends for parchments again, for quills, for Varys. What if the Reach can be turned? What if Marguerite Tyrell, that perfect rose, could be offered Joffrey's hand? It worked, in another turning of this same cruel wheel. But Varys only folds his soft hands. The girl is already promised, my lord, queen to Stannis. The Tyrells have staked their garden on that claim. A door that once saved them is gone. On that, we agree. So Tyrion turns inward, to the city itself. He rides the walls with the gold cloaks at his back, shouting promises down to gaunt faces. Double rations for those who serve, and silver for every man who holds his post. Knighthood for the first onto the enemy's ship. His voice carries. His eyes see the doubt it cannot quite cut through. When bread riots flare, he answers with whips and gallows. It works in the narrow sense. The streets go quiet. The silence feels worse. Let's explore a different kind of battle now. Not charge and countercharge, but trap and counter-trap. In the river, hulks are quietly filled with wildfire, chained in place. The plan is simple. They're brutal, elegant. Lure Stannis' fleet into the choke point, spring the chain, light the sky green. Yet reports from the Blackwater trouble him. Stannis' fleet is larger, more disciplined. Davos Seaworth, that stubborn smuggler, scouts every bend and current. No reckless rush, no easy blunder into a painted kill zone. What happens when the enemy refuses to make your favorite mistake? Night after night, Tyrion sits over maps that no longer answer to his kind of genius. No rival faction to play against another, no rival king to flatter or undercut. Just one united host, one clear claim, one brotherhood of Stormlands and Reach that does not quarrel. For once, his wit finds no purchase. "This isn't a Game of Thrones anymore," he mutters to the empty chamber. "It's a siege. Strength, morale, time. On all three counts, the city is bleeding. And as the first test stones from the enemy trebuchets arc lazily over the river and smash into the outer districts, Tyrion understands the shape of the coming struggle. He can only make the fall costlier. He cannot, by cleverness alone, prevent it. Siege and starvation, Stannis' iron strategy. The first stones fall like a promise. By the time the dust settles in Flea Bottom, Stannis has already refused 3 proposals for an immediate assault. Renly presses him in the command tent outside the city, maps weighed down by daggers and cups of watered wine. "We could end this in a day, brother." And one hard push at the mudgate, ladders on the walls, my knights leading the charge. The realm will remember who actually took the throne. Stannis studies the map instead of his brother's smile. The river glints in inked blue, the city walls in harsh black. He would have preferred to strike at once, to be done with it. But his mind will not let go of numbers, men, food, time. No, we close our fist. We take the river, the road, the sea. Let them eat their pride first. Let's explore what that looks like. The tightening begins on the water. The Redwine and Valerion ships anchor in a broad crescent across Blackwater Bay, masts like a forest of spears. No trading cogs slip through, no river barges drift unchallenged. Stannis' captain sees grain ships bound for the capital and turn them toward his own camps. Smoke rises from burned hulls that try to flee. On that, we agree. His admirals tell him, the harbor is a noose. They on land, the Reach and Stormlands banners spread out like a slow, patient tide. Renly's green-cloaked knights ride the Rose Road, turning back merchants and small folk alike. Foraging parties strip the countryside bare, driving every cow, every sack of barley, every frightened refugee away from the capital and into the royal host's own wagons. Men who try to slip past are caught between patrols and sent stumbling back toward the gates. "Drive them to the walls," Stannis orders. "Let Joffrey feed them if he calls himself king." Renly's jaw tightens as he watches another knot of desperate people turned around at spear point. "You're penning 100,000 mouths inside that city," he says quietly. "Our allies in the Reach like fat harvests and happy small folk. This will not serve our reputation." Reputation? Stannis' voice is flat. A quick, hard siege ends the war. Every day we delay, more lords choose sides, more villages burn. "How many die then?" Davos would have preferred to say nothing. Yet when he sees children pressed against the closed gates, when he smells the fear on the wind, the words force their way out. There's quick and there's cruel, your grace. King Robert broke sieges with gold and wine when he could. He said starving men made for bitter subjects. Something flickers behind Stannis' eyes at his brother's name. Justice demands the city yield. Duty demands he end this war before it spreads north and west. But where does justice end and simple vengeance begin? What if the line has already blurred and he is the last to see it? Days stretch. Then the first raven comes. Riots in the markets. Bakers torn apart over loaves. A second message speaks of guards overwhelmed, of corpses left in the streets. A third, from a half-mad informant inside the Red Keep, whispers of darker things. Of mothers selling the last of their honor for crusts. Of rumors that in the blackest cellars of Flea Bottom, starving men are carving meat from more than beasts. Renly reads it, goes pale, and shoves the parchment away as if it burns. "Very well," he says hoarsely. "Your strategy works." Stannis folds the message with hands that feel suddenly heavy. Victory is coming. The throne is within reach. Yet he knows, as he looks toward the city, that whatever king walks through those gates will wear this siege like a shadow. And as another raven circles down toward the camp, carrying news that will force a choice neither brother is ready to make, the noose around King's Landing pulls one notch tighter. Renly's alternative, a show of mercy and power. The raven's wings fade into the dark, but its message lingers between the brothers like a drawn sword. The noose is tightening. So, what if, instead of pulling harder, Renly decides to loosen it in full view of the city? He turns from the parapet, old green cloak snapping in the river wind, and studies Stannis' hard profile. The camp below is a forest of spears and banners, cook fires burning low, siege lines creeping closer with every passing day. The king would have preferred to let hunger do the work. Renly would rather let the city watch them win. "Brother," Renly says, voice light but eyes intent. "We're doing this the ugly way, slow, silent, afraid. Why? We have the larger army, the better claim, the stronger allies. Oh, we let them see it." Stannis does not look at him. "They will see when the gates fall. And curse you for every empty larder between," Renly replies. "Let's explore another road. We stage our strength. We march the host in ordered columns beneath the walls, banners of Stormlands and Dragonstone side by side, siege towers half-built where they can all count the levels, rams, ladders, the red wine fleet in the bay. Overwhelming might, displayed like a tourney. Then we offer terms. That word sits ill with Stannis. Terms? Generous ones, Renly presses. Any gate captain who opens his portcullis lives, keeps his small folk fed, keeps his lands. Commoners who refuse to fight are given food and safe conduct. Lesser lords who bend the knee to the true king keep their titles. The ones who cling to Joffrey's madness? His smile thins. They can explain themselves from the headsman's block. Stannis' jaw works. A king must be feared. That much he understands. Loved? That has never been his gift. Mercy breeds insolence. If they think I can be swayed by soft pleas, the realm will test me at every turn. Or it will remember you as the king who spared it a sack, Renly counters. We send ravens into the city before the next moonrise. Promises of bread, safety, pardon for those who stand aside. Heralds at the walls, reading out Joffrey's crimes, Cersei's lies, your lawful claim. Let the bakers and butchers hear your name before they taste your steel. Do you want a throne seated on skulls, or on grudging respect that might, seven willing, grow into something warmer? He does not say love. Stannis does not trust the word. What if, Renly adds, softer now. We win the city and the people in the same stroke. You begin your reign with cheers instead of silence. Cheers fade, Stannis answers. Law endures. Yet there is a flicker in his eyes, an unwelcome image of gates opening not to fire, but to kneeling men and unbloodied children. He imagines, too, the danger. Leniency today might invite rebellion tomorrow. And if the realm whispers that victory was won by Renly's charm rather than his justice, does that not weaken the very crown he has bled for? Renly sees the doubt and presses, just enough. Very well. Keep your siege, keep your law. but allow me corridors of mercy. Even one gate under truce each day for those who would leave the city. Carts of grain sent in under your banner, not Lannister gold. Let our heralds speak, let our ravens fly. No promises you cannot stomach, only this. Those who lay down arms now will live. There is a long silence. The wind snaps the stag banners, black and green. Finally, Stannis nods once, as if conceding a minor point in a larger, invisible argument. Mercy corridors, he says. Be no more. Public words as well as iron, Renly insists. On that we agree, Stannis answers, though he does not quite believe it. And so, the siege shifts. Not in engines or in numbers, but in sound. Cries of hunger begin to mingle with shouted offers of pardon. Ravens rise and fall like black snow. At the walls, heralds name every crime of the boy on the throne, and every right of the brother outside it. Inside King's Landing, bakers whisper of bread under a different king. That gold cloaks listen, hands tight on their spears. And somewhere in the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister realizes that this is no longer only a war of walls and ships, but of stories, loyalties, and the hearts of a starving realm. The fall of the capital, how King's Landing, actually falls. The hungry city reaches its breaking point at dawn. Smoke hangs over King's Landing, thin and bitter. The granaries are bare, the fishmongers' stalls empty. In the alleys by the mud gate, small folk gnaw on bark and shoe leather, while septons mutter that a just king would not let his people starve. What if the walls themselves are no longer the Lannisters' strongest defense, but the misery behind them? On the ramparts, a gold cloak shifts his weight and feels his mail hang loose on a body thinned by hunger. Below, he can see the Baratheon Tyrell camp, ordered lines of tents, banners of crowned stags and golden roses, cookfires that never seem to go out. He hears the heralds again. Been naming Stannis' claim, naming Renly's offer of pardon to those who yield. When a minor lord of flea-bottom birth, recently made commander of a city gate, whispers that the right gate opened at the right hour might save them all, no one laughs. In the Red Keep, Cersei drinks and watches the same smoke. Joffrey rages, demanding a sortie, demanding fire and blood. "They are traitors!" he shrieks. "I am the king." Stannis, on the hill across the river, merely says, "You are a boy." He would have preferred to batter the city into submission, stone by stone, but his brother and his new allies insist that a starving realm must see a savior, not a butcher. Renly only smiles. "Let's explore the option where they open the doors for us, brother. It is easier on the masonry." The decision comes at midnight. A postern by the river, its hinges rusted, its guards bribed with the only coin that matters now, clemency. Davos Seaworth moves first, leading a disciplined vanguard of Stormlands men and Tyrell spearmen through the dark, boots splashing in the shallows. He would have preferred the open sea to these stinking banks, but his king needs a steady hand at the point of the spear. By sunrise, the main gate groans open from within. Renly and Loras ride at the head of a glittering column as a section of the outer wall, already weakened by siege engines, crumbles with a roar. The clash is sharp but brief. I have many gold cloaks throw down their spears. Some even shout, "Stannis!" as they kneel. Joffrey and Cersei choose flight. They try for the river, a covered litter and a half-dozen red cloaks slipping through a hidden way. But Davos's men are already there. Arrows whisper across the water. The litter overturns in the mud. Cersei dies clawing at the banks, her golden hair dark with filth. Joffrey is dragged out screaming, bound, and delivered to his uncle's justice. There is a trial. Because Stannis insists on law even when the verdict is foregone, the boy king spits and calls him usurper. Stannis lists the bastardy, the murders, the starving of the city. "The throne is not a toy," he says. "It is a duty you have failed. The sentence is death." Renly watches, jaw tight, and says only, "On that we agree." Yet the city does not burn. Renly and the Tyrells ride through the streets, breaking up looting with sharp words and sharper steel. At bread from Reach granaries is handed out at the Great Sept. Loras personally oversees the guarding of septs and brothels alike, making sure the army serves discipline, not appetite. The sack that might have been becomes instead a grim occupation with unexpected mercy. By week's end, the Lannister line is torn down from the Red Keep. Stannis Baratheon sits the Iron Throne at last, jaw clenched, knuckles white on the sword across his knees. Renly stands at his right hand, his easy smile hiding the calculations behind his eyes. Margaery Tyrell kneels before them, poised to be queen of a realm that thinks the war in the south is over. But as ravens fly north and red priests whisper of darker omens beyond the wall, we must ask, has the true war even begun? Crowning. Margaery. A new queen, old tensions. The bells of the Great Sept toll until the stone seems to vibrate. Incense curls in pale ribbons. Rose petals drift from the galleries like slow, bleeding snow. The realm has seen heads on spikes and burned fleets. Today, it sees silk and gold. Margaery Tyrell kneels before the Iron Throne, Tyrell green and gold flooding the nave. Knights of the Reach in polished steel. Ladies in gowns the color of summer fields. Outside, half-starved small folk press against the doors, murmuring the name of the girl whose wagons of grain have finally broken the famine. When the High Septon lowers the crown onto her hair, the cheer that rises is not for Stannis. It is for her. Stannis feels that like a stone in his boot. He stands rigid beside her, jaw tight, cloak heavy on his shoulders. This is necessary, he tells himself. The Tyrell army, the Stormlands, Renly's allies, this marriage binds them all. A queen who can smile for him while he serves the realm in the harsher ways. What if the crown must sometimes be loved, even if the king is not? High in a shadowed alcove, another queen watches. Or was. Selyse Florent's hands are folded so tightly the knuckles have gone white. Her Baratheon stag has been replaced by a more modest, pious gown, her seat pushed back from the royal dais. Some say she will be sent to Dragonstone to tend the shrines. Others whisper she will lead a circle of the faithful in the capital, a quiet court of ash and prayer. She hears the small folk roar for Margaery and thinks of fire instead of roses. And around her cluster, a few hard-eyed lords and septons who never trusted the Reach. Men who mutter that a true queen does not need pageants to prove her worth. A faction is forming, whether Stannis wills it or not. Between these women stands Shireen, still heir in law, still the king's only true-born child, yet suddenly small beside this radiant new queen. She walks at Margaery's side during the feast, but the toasts are for future Baratheon Tyrell sons. A boy with his father's claim and his mother's charm. What happens to a quiet, bookish girl then? Renly watches it all with a goblet in hand and a smile sharpened to a blade. His wife is queen, his brother is king. He is hand of the king, master of the Stormlands, and the Reach's favorite son-in-law. On that, we agree. He has never stood higher. And yet, when the crowd chants, "Margaery, Margaery," instead of Stannis, some of that warmth spills onto him. They remember the Golden King who might have been. He feels it. Stannis feels it. The space between them tightens. "Enjoying the adoration, brother?" Stannis mutters later, away from the music. "I'm merely borrowing what belongs to the crown," Renly answers lightly. "Very well. I'll return it when you smile." Stannis does not smile. That night, in a quiet solar, 2 Tyrell women weigh a king. Olenna picks at a plate of olives. Margaery unpins heavy jewels from her hair. "Mao, he's iron," Olenna says. "Bends poorly, breaks enemies well enough, but iron does not dance." "I do not need him to dance," Margaery answers, "only to listen when the realm cries out." "Then we must give him the right voices to hear," Olenna replies. "Your brother, for instance, the one with a crown-shaped hole over his head. Let's explore that quiet calculation. Can Stannis be guided, or will the Reach one day decide that a charming hand belongs a step higher on the throne itself? Bold the fate of the Lannisters, lions in a Baratheon. World Renly listens to Olenna's warning and smiles that soft, dangerous smile of his. A charming hand beside a hard king is useful. But what happens to the lions who once ruled the court when the Stag brothers take the throne together? Let's explore how a Baratheon world reshapes every Lannister fate. King's Landing falls quickly in this timeline, before Tywin can ride to the rescue. The gold lion banners are torn down, and the red cloaks disarmed, and Stannis walks through the ruined throne room with ash in his hair and judgment in his eyes. Cersei is dragged before him in chains, Joffrey and Tommen clinging to her skirts, more frightened than regal. incest, treason, usurpation of his claim. The charges are simple. The punishment is not. "Burn them and be done," Stannis might growl. "The law is clear." Renly, standing at his brother's shoulder, would prefer something more profitable. May political marriages can serve the realm better than corpses. What if Joffrey is quietly executed as the visible symbol of the false line, while Tommen is spared, stripped of style and crown, perhaps fostered in the Stormlands as a ward, a soft boy raised far from Lannister whispers? Cersei herself could be forced into cloistered life, shut in a mother house with a septis veil instead of a golden crown. It satisfies justice without parading a queen's death through the streets. On that, we agree. Stannis will not forgive, but he can be steered towards sentences that secure the realm rather than simply feed his anger. Tyrion, however, is a different puzzle. He argued against wildfire madness, tried to leash Joffrey's worst impulses, and understands coin and courts better than most of Stannis' grim bannermen. Renly sees it quickly. A clever lion in the counting rooms is a useful counterweight when your allies in Highgarden control half the food in the realm. And Tyrion might be imprisoned, interrogated, then offered a bargain, serve as master of coin or royal advisor, under watch, or see Casterly Rock's wealth seized outright. "Very well," Tyrion would mutter, cup in hand. "If I must choose between ledgers and heads on spikes, I'll take the ink." Far to the west, Tywin hears of the fall of the city and does not ride to vengeance. He turns his army around. The Rock's gates close, its mines and ports fortified. He cannot win the throne back, but so he focuses on preserving Lannister gold and the Westerland's hardened pride. No reckless charges, no red wedding scheme, only patient, poisonous waiting. Jaime's road twists darker. As the Kingslayer who saved a realm from wildfire, he might expect some understanding. Instead, Stannis sees only a man who broke the most sacred oath, then stood beside a false king while small folk starved. Captive or fugitive, Uemi becomes a living reminder that good deeds done for the wrong reasons win no mercy from this king. So the lions lose the throne, but keep their teeth. A humbled, embittered great house, pushed from the center yet rich, dangerous, and nursing every slight. In a realm ruled by Baratheon brothers and Tyrell roses, what happens when a cornered lion finally decides to strike back? Robb's choice, revisited, peace with the stag, crown. A cornered lion is dangerous, but a tired wolf, or staring south at a new Baratheon king on the Iron Throne, has his own choice to make. When King's Landing falls to the brothers Baratheon, word reaches Robb Stark not as rumor, but as a drumbeat of hard reports. Stannis crowned with steel and law, Renly beside him, smiling for the realm. The Lannister banners pulled down from the Red Keep. Tywin's main army broken near the God's Eye. Jaime, a captive reminder of southern treachery. The war in the south is no longer a chaos of claims. It has a single, sharp point. In Riverrun's Great Hall, the air is thick with river mist and anger. Robb's lords argue for marching south, for burning Casterly Rock, for making the lions pay. Catelyn listens, fingers tight on the table, knowing the numbers. The north and Riverlands are bled. Winter is coming, whatever crown her son wears. What if the next southern army they face is not a divided Lannister host, but a disciplined Baratheon Tyrell force under one banner? As she asks for ships instead of swords, an envoy, not an invasion. Catelyn volunteers herself, as she did once for Renly. This time her offer is clearer. Recognition of northern and riverlord autonomy, the withdrawal of southern troops from their lands, and royal punishment for those who betrayed House Stark, Walder Frey, the Lannister commanders, the men who ordered Ned's death. On Dragonstone turned royal seat, Stannis hears the terms in a chamber that still smells faintly of smoke and salt. That he stands rigid, jaw clenched. A king of half a realm is no king at all, his mind insists. The 7 kingdoms are one, or they are a lie. Yet Davos quietly lays out the ledgers, exhausted levies, ships in need of repair, Tywin's surviving allies in the west, and the Ironborn ever ready to raid. A northern campaign would be long, costly, and give every malcontent lord time to scheme. Renly leans against the window, watching gulls wheel over Blackwater Bay, and lets the silence stretch. "Oh, brother," he says at last, "you have the throne, you have the law. What you lack is peace. Let the wolf keep his forest, so long as he howls your name when called." His tone is light, but his eyes are sharp. Grant them broad self-rule. Call it a gracious settlement after a just victory. The realm will sing of your mercy, and I will make sure they remember who advised it. Stannis snaps back that he will not trade away his crown like a purse of coins. Renly only smiles. "You are not trading, you are ruling." A warden in the north with near kingly powers still bends the knee. The maps remain whole, the taxes flow, and our army does not freeze to death in snows they were never meant to march through. There is a long pause. Stannis stares at the painted table, at the carved wolf's head in the far corner. He would have preferred a clean submission, a kneeling boy king renouncing his claim, but the choice is between iron law and living subjects. Slowly, he nods. Very well, but he may keep his title in all but name, Warden of the North and Trident. His lords will answer my summons. His banners will not rise against my crown. Walder Frey will answer for his crimes. On that, we agree, Renly answers, almost gently. So, a settlement is struck. Robb returns to Winterfell, not as a defeated rebel, but as a near-kingly warden, with his people intact and his enemies marked. The need for a secret Frey Lannister wedding trap evaporates. There is no political profit in butchering a peaceable warden who has just shaken hands with the throne. Yet, peace on parchment is not peace in men's hearts. If the Red Wedding never happens, what new knives are being sharpened in the dark instead? No Red Wedding. How one alliance saves a generation. Those knives never find the same feast. With no Red Wedding to plan, the great butchery of Northern and River Lords simply never happens. Robb Stark rides south to treat with the new king as a wary equal, and he rides home again. At his side, Catelyn returns to Riverrun, and then to Winterfell, not as a broken ghost, but as a mother who has seen the Game of Thrones from the inside and lived. The Blackfish lives. Greatjon Umber still bellows in council. Galbart Glover, Mage Mormont, Rickard Karstark's surviving kin, the Lannisters, the Brackens and Blackwoods, all those hard, or scarred men who died in a songless hall at the Twins keep their swords and their grudges. The camps along the Trident look different in this timeline. Fewer widows, more gray beards. The North does not lose its spine in a single night. An intact cadre of seasoned commanders returns home with Robb, bringing back hard lessons about Southern politics instead of funeral pyres. When the snows deepen and the dead begin to walk, there are simply more men to stand on the walls, yet more banners to answer the call. What if the Night's Watch Ravens reach a North that has not been decapitated, but merely bloodied? At the center of this avoided catastrophe sits one sullen old man whose moment never comes. Walder Frey still has his bridge. He still mutters about slights. He still eyes his lordly betters with that watery resentment. But without a desperate Lannister offer and the promise of royal favor, there is no reason for him to gamble everything on treachery. Yet Stannis sits the Iron Throne, Tywin lies dead by the God's Eye. Cersei is a captive, not a queen. What could the Freys possibly gain by murdering the North's warden, who has just bent the knee in good faith to the lawful king? Stannis would give him little more than courtesy and the continued right to tax the crossing. Renly, with that easy Stormlands charm, might even ride through the Twins once, smile at Walder's brood, and then forget him. The bridge remains important to the realm, but not infamous. No songs, no flayed wolves in the hall, just another toll to be paid on the road between North and South. Rose Bolton feels the change like a cold draft under a door. In the true history, the Red Wedding offers him a clean, if monstrous, path. Butcher his young king, be named Warden of the North by Lannisters desperate for order, and let his bastard rule Winterfell in their name. Here, that offer never comes. There is no Lannister victory to hide behind. Oh, no Casterly Rock gold to buy absolution. A Baratheon king, stern and lawful, sits in judgment instead. Rose is too cautious to stab a crowned ally in the back without a clear patron. He watches Robb closely, measures every order, but each passing month of peace makes open betrayal harder. Ramsay remains a whispered shame, not a legitimized terror unleashed on the North. So when the long night begins to gather, the North stands less fractured, fewer burned castles, fewer broken houses, and far more living veterans who have marched in proper formation and seen real war. The River Lords, spared the trauma of mass murder under guest right, are bruised but not shattered, still able to serve as the realm's shield between Harrenhal and the Neck. Let's explore the quiet enormity of that. Renly's choice to back his brother does not only decide which stag wears a crown, it removes the single bloodiest stroke against House Stark from the board. Robb lives, Catelyn lives. Sansa and Arya are not the last, scattered embers of a burned line, but daughters of a house that still has a living king in the north and a recognized warden under the Iron Throne. Very well, Renly might say with a half smile, hearing of these northern fortunes. My offer to support your claim seems to have bought the wolves a few extra winters. On that, we agree, Stannis would answer, even if he'd never admit how much it matters. But a stronger north and Riverlands do not only change how the dead are met, they change who dares to challenge the Baratheon peace next, and from where that challenge comes. Daenerys, delayed, a calmer Westeros for the Dragon Queen. The challenge does not come from lions or krakens now. It comes from across the narrow sea, carried first as whispers, then as frightened sailors' tales. What if Daenerys Targaryen hears of a Baratheon king who has already ended the war before her dragons are grown? Let's explore how that changes her road to the throne. In this timeline, the War of the Five Kings burns hot and brief. With Renly's Stormlands host and Tyrell allies marching beside Stannis' lean, disciplined army, King's Landing falls early. Joffrey dies or vanishes into a black cell. Cersei is tried, and a lawful king sits the Iron Throne years before Daenerys has 3 full-grown dragons to offer. The realm bleeds, but it does not shatter. No red wedding, no endless Lannister Tyrell intrigues, no boy king sneering from the battlements while the small folk starve. That calmer Westeros reaches Essos long before Daenerys does. In the hot streets of Meereen, when she asks what waits across the sea, the answers are different. Not a mad boy and his cruel mother, but a hard man of Dragonstone, a Baratheon whose claim was proved by war and law. How do you sell yourself as a liberator when the realm you mean to liberate is largely at peace? She would still hate the usurpers, of course. In her mind, every Baratheon is the brother of the man who stole her father's throne. Yet even Daenerys can count. Fewer burned villages, fewer massacred river lords, fewer northern lords crying out for any banner but the stags. They've her best propaganda, I will break the wheel, lands softer when the wheel has been roughly straightened already. Pattern interrupt. Imagine Varys in this world. The spider leans over a map of a united realm and has to ask himself a new question. Is the Silver Queen truly the realm's best hope? Or merely another fire to pour on a land that has finally stopped burning? Stannis, for his part, would not lose sleep over rumors of a girl with lizards in the east. When she lands, oh, she will be judged, he would say, more concerned with mustering grain for the north than chasing phantoms in Korth. Melisandre might speak of dragons as signs, but the king has seen whites on the snow. On that, we agree. Dead men with blue eyes are harder to ignore than distant Targaryens. Without a Lannister-ruled capital to demonize, Daenerys' support base shrinks. Dornish princes might still offer quiet words. A few exiled knights might still swear to her name. Yet the Tyrells, at the Stormlands, even many in the Reach now serve a king who kept faith with law and fed the realm. Why risk all for a foreign queen with fire when a grim Baratheon has already given you order? So, her invasion, when it comes, is later. Harder. No easy landing in a realm desperate for any change. Instead, Dragonfire meets a more legitimate, more united kingdom. And the final struggle is not chaos versus freedom, but fire against law. And that raises the final question. When those two forces meet, which one breaks? Idoi six tours, or sexte manridamors, inbek detto dead. That still march fire against law, but far to the north, neither side of that struggle matters to the things that do not breathe. Beyond the wall, the wind still cuts like broken glass. Snow whispers over old weirwood roots, blue eyes open in the dark. The others do not pause to ask which Baratheon sits the throne, or whether a foreign queen has dragons. They march because that is what they are. The dead rise because the living keep dying. What if the realm, for once, is not too late to notice? In this timeline, the War of the Five Kings burns fast, and then gutters out. No endless Lannister Stark grind in the Riverlands. No Red Wedding. No years of wasted strength. A united Baratheon victory means something Westeros has almost never had. Spare attention. Gold that is not being poured into buying sellswords in the free cities can be sent north. Grain that is not feeding 4 rival armies can fill the Night's Watch stores at Castle Black. Stannis stands in the solar at Dragonstone, a map of the wall unrolled before him instead of the Blackwater. His jaw is set in that familiar, stubborn line. He remembers the ravens from Jeor Mormont. He remembers Maester Aemon's thin, shaking script. In canon, those letters fall on deaf ears until his own defeat drives him north in desperation. Here, he reads them as king. With the Iron Throne already won, and the realm, mostly, at peace. They will say it is northern superstition, he mutters. Renly, lounging in a high-backed chair, turns his cup in his hands. They will, he agrees lightly, but they will say it to me, brother, not to you. That is the difference. Stannis has always taken the threat seriously. The man who garrisons Storm's End through famine does not laugh at cold and hunger. But his nature wins few hearts. Renly's nature wins too many. Let's explore how that changes the wall's fate. When a grim king speaks of walking corpses, Reach and Westerland's lords smirk behind their cups. When the same message is carried by the smiling hero who broke the siege at King's Landing, who feasted them in high garden tents and called them friends, they listen. Renly can stand in the hall at Old Town, in the Manderley Court at White Harbor, and say, "My brother does not jest. I have seen his proof. Will you serve your king? Or will you wait to be corpses yourselves?" Dramatic, Stannis would say. Unnecessary. Effective, Renly would answer. On that, we agree. So, the ravens fly earlier. The royal decree to reinforce the Night's Watch carries the seals of both Baratheon brothers and the Tyrell Rose. The North, unbroken and unbutchered, can actually answer. Robb Stark, still king in the North in all but name, can send men without fearing Lannister raids in his rear. The Tyrells, eager to prove their loyalty to the new order, offer timber, engineers, and food for the wall instead of only feasts in the capital. Picture the difference at the Fist of the First Men. More rangers, better weapons, flaming pitch and dragonglass in proper supply. Does the Watch still break? Or does Mance Rayder's great host, and the dead behind it, find a wall that is not half abandoned, but bristling? Very well, the realm is stronger, but against an enemy that does not tire, is stronger enough? Because even with all these advantages, one question hangs over every council table from Winterfell to Highgarden. Does a united Baratheon realm, with the North intact and the Tyrells on board, truly give Westeros a fighting chance against the dead? Or does it only mean there are more soldiers for the others to kill and claim? Stannis the Just, Renly the Beloved. A two-headed monarchy. So does this united Baratheon realm actually hold together? Or does it simply delay the next war? Let's explore what a two-headed monarchy really looks like when the banners are furled and the swords go back in their sheaths. In name, there is one king. Stannis sits the Iron Throne, the crowned Baratheon, the lawful victor who broke the Lannisters and restored order to King's Landing. The courtiers bow to him first. The decrees bear his seal, and every master in the realm writes his name in their ledgers. Yet in practice, another gravity well pulls at the court. Renly, Waea's hand and darling of the Reach, moves through the Red Keep like a warm breeze after winter. Tyrell knights trail him, Reach gold oils his projects, and half the small folk swear they'd rather shout Renly than Stannis at a tourney. The balance of power is simple to describe and hard to live with. Stannis holds the law, Renly holds the laughter. The older brother commands the fleet, the garrisons, the right of judgment. The younger brother commands the feasts, the favors. Went and the lords who do not wish to be judged at all. When a petition comes before the throne, Stannis hears it with a clenched jaw. When the petitioner leaves, it is Renly who catches them in the corridor, smiling, offering a softer path. Flashpoints appear almost at once. Gold is the first battleground. The realm is bled dry by war. Yet the Reach presses for exemptions, for leniency on tariffs, for sweeteners to keep their harvest flowing south. Stannis wants a hard, even tax. Renly wants a tax that does not send his allies stalking back to Highgarden in a huff. They can pay, Stannis growls in council. They can leave, Renly answers lightly, but his eyes are not laughing. Then comes religion. The red priests whisper in the king's ear, their flames painting shadows on the throne room walls. Stannis is not blind to their power. He has seen too much to dismiss R'hllor outright. Yet the capital still rings with sept bells. Mont and the Tyrells will not kneel to a foreign god. What if the king orders a red temple raised on Visenya's hill? What if the High Septon threatens to denounce it? For once, Renly is the conservative one. Burning idols is bad theater, brother. Burning septs is worse. On that, we agree, Stannis thinks, though he will not give the words air. Justice itself becomes a knife's edge. Former Lannister bannermen, iron-born turncloaks, Freys who smell which way the wind now blows, the king would strip, flog, or execute them by habit. The hand sees something else: hostages, leverage, future votes in council. Pattern interrupt. One morning, a lord condemned by Stannis walks free not by royal pardon, but because Margaery has already woven him into a marriage pact. The sentence cannot be carried out without unraveling 3 alliances at once. Here, their styles truly intertwine. And Stannis' incorruptible reputation makes every compromise Renly brokers seem less like corruption and more like mercy backed by steel. Renly's charm, in turn, makes swallowing Stannis' harsher edicts easier. A Reach Lord might grumble about a levy, but if the smiling hand assures him the king's own household bears the same burden, it stings less. Very well, they say, and they stay. Yet every compliment for Renly is a stone in Stannis' boot. Every song in the streets that names the younger brother more loudly than the king is another reminder that love flows where law does not. How long before a Tyrell whispers that the realm would be gentler under a different Baratheon? How long before talk shifts from Renly as hand to Renly's future son, or Shireen's Reachborn husband as a better heir? The result is a precarious harmony. For a time, the realm enjoys something Westeros rarely knows: relative stability. Roads are patrolled. Harvests move. The north is slowly courted back into the fold, but beneath the calm, hairline fractures run through throne and council alike. It will take pressure to expose them, the cold from beyond the wall, dragonfire from across the narrow sea. When those forces arrive, this two-headed monarchy will either stand back to back, or finally turn to face itself. Shireen, future of the realm, succession in a changed timeline. Peace settles over the Red Keep like dust. But dust always shows the cracks first. The War of 5 Kings is over in name, yet in the nursery and council chamber, another quieter struggle begins. By law, the matter is simple. Stannis is king, Shireen is his heir. The Baratheon line in the Stormlands is otherwise thin as a blade's edge. Renly has no true-born children, no secret son to spring from a sept's shadows. On parchment, the succession reads clean. After Stannis, the throne passes to the shy girl with the grayscale scars and the careful smile. But when has the realm ever obeyed parchment without protest? Let's explore the pressure that follows. Margaery is queen now, rose and stag entwined on every banner. She knows the law as well as any Maester. She will call Shireen princess in public, kneel to her at feasts, take her hand in the godswood. Yet she also knows that every child she bears is a Tyrell as much as a Baratheon. Aemma and the Reach did not march its vast army and its grain into King's Landing merely to serve as wet nurse to another woman's line. In the Queen's Solar, with the city's hum muffled by thick stone, Renly lounges in a high-backed chair, watching Shireen read by the window. "Sweet girl," he murmurs, just loud enough for Margaery to hear. But the realm prefers a handsome king to a clever queen. You know that. Margaery pours wine, the movement smooth, unhurried. "Nam, the realm will have what is best for it," she answers. "And what if what is best happens to have my eyes?" Renly's smile tilts. He would have preferred to be the one on the throne, but his brother wears the crown and his office's hand gives him power of a different sort. His influence will not pass to a son bearing his name. It must be woven into policy, into marriages, into who follows Shireen. His legacy is not a bloodline, but a direction. Stannis, for his part, hears every whisper. It master of laws, master of coin. Even the Tyrell cousins at court will, sooner or later, make the same offer in softer or harsher words. Set aside the girl. Name the future son of Margaery first in the line. Very well, Stannis says once, fingers drumming on the painted table. You would have me break my own law for the comfort of your lords? Not break, Renly counters. Bend, betroth her. A Tyrell boy, a foss away, a high tower. Tie her to the reach and everyone sleeps easier. On that, we agree, Stannis thinks. Though he does not say it, Shireen must be protected. If the realm will not accept her as a ruling queen, then she must at least be bound to one strong enough to keep daggers from her back. A betrothal to a reach-favored lord becomes the compromise. The line remains hers in name, but the Tyrells see their blood poised to inherit in practice. What if that fragile solution only hides the rot? Each healthy son Margaery bears will deepen the question. Daughter of law, aid or sons of power? As ravens begin to whisper of dragons across the narrow sea and dead things beyond the wall, the most dangerous storm in the Red Keep may not be in the throne room at all, but in the nursery where a princess and a prince are taught to count, and to measure what they are owed. Melisandre in a world where her shadow wasn't needed. In that nursery, while a princess learns her numbers and a prince learns his titles, another lesson is being whispered in darker halls. Fire. And what it owes to the coming night. What if the woman teaching that lesson never sent a shadow to snuff out a brother's life? Melisandre of Ashai walks the Red Keep's galleries as a curiosity rather than a whispered terror. There is no tale of a black thing slipping through a tent, no dead king sprawled in shining armor. Without that infamous proof, her standing at court is odd. Stannis still listens to her, because he remembers a night on Dragonstone when the flames showed him a stag crowned in fire and a throne of twisted swords. To him, that vision was as real as any battle. To everyone else, she is a foreign priestess with bright eyes and a foreign god, tolerated because the king is stubborn and the war has, for the moment, been won. The Tyrells do not share Stannis' tolerance. Incense from the Great Sept curls over the city like a counterspell. The new High Septon preaches of the Seven's mercy, of the Mother's love for the realm, and pointedly omits any mention of red gods and burning idols. Margaery, now queen, smiles when she sees Melisandre at court, but the smile is the one she uses for a rival she cannot yet dismiss. Our allies from Ashai bring interesting customs, she might say lightly to Renly, fingers resting on his sleeve. Renly, for his part, would quip that one priest in red is preferable to 3 in gray, but even he would watch the faith's reaction with care. A Reach Queen and a High Septon together can move a city. A lone red woman must move a king. So Melisandre shifts her ground. If the throne is more secure, if the Lannisters are broken, and the Stormlands and Reach stand united, then the enemy she speaks of must be named differently. Snow, cold, dead things in the woods. Let's explore how quickly she would turn Stannis' gaze north once the crown sits more firmly on his brow. Or she would stand with him over maps not of the Blackwater, but of the Wall, tracing the line of ancient stone with a painted nail. The true war is there, your grace. This peace is a lantern in the wind. Would a king who has finally won his claim waste his army chasing ghosts? Or would the memory of the flames, and his own hard sense of duty, drag him toward the Night's Watch far sooner than in the original tale? Davos Seaworth would have preferred almost any other counsel. The smuggler watches her carefully, seeing not a savior, but a fanatic, whose certainty has already cost men their lives in smaller, quieter ways. In a realm less torn by civil war, he finds more ears willing to listen. Renly, with his easy charm, can couch Davos's fears in softer words. That burning icons in the city is poor politics. That foreign fire will alienate Westerosi hearts just when the new king needs them most. She serves you, brother, Renly might say, but the faith serves everyone. On that we agree, do we not? Stannis would grind his teeth, caught between the priestess who offers visions and the brother who offers votes. Yet stability cuts both ways. A court not constantly counting casualties has more room to hear of stranger dangers. When ravens come from the wall speaking of white shadows and blue eyes, Melisandre's prophecies no longer compete with daily reports of burned fleets and sacked towns. They sound less like madness and more like an unwelcome but possible truth. Very well, the realm seems to say at last. If the war for the throne is over, then what waits beyond the wall? And in that question lies the next great turning of this story. The Tyrell's long game, roses plotting in the shadows. If the realm is finally looking north, the Reach is looking sideways. A lawful king on the throne is tolerable. A lawful king who cannot be bought is a problem. Only Olenna Tyrell understands that. Before most of the court even realizes, Stannis smiles less now that the crown is actually his. The Red Keep gardens smell of lemon and crushed mint. Bees hum, servants withdraw, and Olenna sits with Margaery beneath a trellis of climbing roses. The new queen skirts a sea of green and gold. The old woman watches the city below, counting ships, counting banners, counting futures. On the surface, House Tyrell has everything it ever wanted. Margaery is queen. Renly is hand. The Reach's army is the spine of royal power. What if that is still not enough? Your husband is honest to a fault, Olenna murmurs. Honesty is a dreadful inconvenience in a king. Margaery laughs softly, but there is tension in it. Stannis' incorruptibility means the usual Reach tools, gold, favors, pleasant threats, slide off him like rain off Stormlands stone. He will not sell offices. He will not forgive debts. He will not let the Reach dictate grain prices, or simply look away while they quietly starve troublesome regions to fill their own granaries. Renly would have preferred a looser reign, but his brother's crown has weight, and he has chosen to serve rather than quarrel. So, the Tyrell game shifts. If they cannot move the king, they will move everything around him. Let's explore how that looks. Reach-friendly candidates begin to appear in quiet succession. A mild, indebted Lord of the Arbor, placed on the small council for ships. It's a soft-spoken Hightower cousin in the City Watch. Reach Septons promoted in King's Landing, preaching a piety that just happens to praise generous harvests and stable markets. Most intriguing of all is young Shireen. The girl with the shy smile and the grayscale-scarred cheek becomes a frequent guest at Margaery's side. Gifts arrive from Highgarden. Books, singers, clever maids who speak warmly of the Reach. Shireen would have preferred her father's company. But the king is buried in ledgers and war reports, and Renly is forever riding between councils and the training yard. The Tyrells offer what Stannis never learned to give, easy affection. Yet, even as they cultivate the princess, another seed is planted. A Baratheon Tyrell heir, born of Margaery and Renly, would be beautiful, beloved, and entirely theirs. Is it so wrong, some Reach lords whisper? All to wonder if such a child might serve the realm better than a sickly girl raised among red priests and northern grimness. Doubts are never spoken plainly, only hinted. Shireen is delicate. Shireen is bookish. Shireen is odd. Is she truly the future a hard-won peace deserves? Stannis hears none of this, but Renly catches the scent. Do not start another succession game while we're still cleaning up the last one, he warns Olenna one evening, as she only smiles and changes the subject to grain tithes. And in the furthest, quietest corners of their councils, darker thoughts bloom. If the king's rigidity ever threatens Reach prosperity outright, if he blocks some grand Tyrell design in Dorne or the Free Cities, might a glorious campaign against northern horrors or foreign invaders offer a convenient opportunity? Men fall from walls. Commanders are lost in the press of battle. Accidents happen, especially when the army is far from prying eyes. On that, we agree. The Tyrells would not move lightly against a Baratheon they helped raise, but they will always keep the possibility on a hidden shelf, alongside their poisons and their promises. So, even as Stannis' laws bind the realm tighter than it has been in a generation, the roses keep their thorns. The Game of Thrones has not ended. It has only changed boards. And when the first true northern crisis forces this careful balance to break, whose knife in the dark will strike first? The North and the Wall. Under Baratheon rule, the knife in the dark never quite falls. Instead, the first true northern crisis comes not as a plot, but as a report. Dead men walking, a vast host of wildlings, blue eyes in the snow. What if, in this calmer realm, the wall does not stand alone? The air atop the wall is knife cold, the sky a hard, pale blue. Stannis Baratheon stands beside Jeor Mormont, black cloak snapping in the wind, jaw clenched as he looks north. He had always known the realm was rotten. He had not expected the rot to wear armor of ice. "Seven hells," Renly mutters behind him, furs piled over bright green silk. "You never did choose pleasant summer progresses, brother." Stannis ignores him, but the presence of both Baratheon brothers here is the change that matters. A victorious, uncontested king can afford to send ships, grain, and men. And Stannis, once he believes, does not do things by halves. Royal edicts go out from King's Landing and Storm's End alike. The Night's Watch is no longer a dumping ground, but a sacred shield. Land grants in the gift are confirmed. Debts for houses that send volunteers are forgiven. A hard offer, but a fair one. Let's explore what that actually looks like. Instead of a watch starving on the brink of mutiny, Black brothers drill with proper steel, eat from southern grain, and receive regular levies from a non-shattered north. Robb Stark, or if fate has claimed him in battle, a strong Stark cousin raised as warden, sends seasoned men from Winterfell, not only green boys from the villages. Northern mountain clans ride the King's Road under royal protection, not as exiles. Jon Snow's path bends with all of this. With the war in the south concluded quickly, his vows are taken in a world that is tense, but not collapsing. No red wedding. No burning of the Riverlands on the same scale. When ravens about the dead reach King's Landing, Stannis does not have to gamble his entire claim to the throne on a desperate northern campaign. He already sits the throne, so he comes north earlier, with more ships, more knights, more red priests at Melisandre's back. Pattern interrupt. It is not Stannis who first questions Jon's name. It is Renly. Watching Jon drill the men of the watch in the yard, Renly tilts his head, amused. "Lascan Ned Stark's bastard fights like a man who expects to command, brother. And he looks very little like a Snow." Stannis does not smile, but he listens. With no Lannister chaos to drown rumors, the truth of Rhaegar and Lyanna has more room to surface, through old northern lords, through a Maester who kept one letter too many. Jon's parentage becomes a question of succession and alliance, not a last-minute revelation on the eve of catastrophe. Meanwhile, the Watch's prestige grows. Moan younger sons of Reach and Stormlands ride north in black, their families proud to serve the king's chosen bulwark. Knights like Loras might not take the black, but lesser lords, eager for honor and royal favor, do. The Wall becomes once more a place where a man may gain a name, not merely lose it. On that, we agree. The others are still terrifying. Ancient magic does not bow to any king's claim. But when the long night finally falls, Westeros faces it with a united throne, an unbroken north, and a wall manned by soldiers, not skeletons of an order long forgotten. Very well. The question is no longer whether the realm survives, but what kind of realm emerges from the winter, and who will shape it when the snows finally melt. If dragons meet a united realm, hypothetical endgame scenarios. When the snows finally melt, another storm appears on the horizon. Not from the north this time, but from Essos, 3 dragons, a Targaryen queen, and a fleet sailing toward a realm that already has a king who actually rules. Daenerys lands to find no Joffrey on the throne, no mad boy king to topple, no starving capital begging for deliverance. Instead, the banners over King's Landing are crowned Stag and Golden Rose. Stannis Baratheon sits the Iron Throne by law and by victory. Margaery, beloved in the streets, moves through the Red Keep like a second spring after winter. Bread is cheaper. The city watch is less corrupt. The small folk grumble, as they always do, but they are not desperate for a dragon savior. What if the mother of dragons arrives to find herself unnecessary? Let's explore the first path. Diplomacy. Daenerys has learned, through marine and fire, that cities are easy to burn and hard to rule. She sees a realm scarred but functioning, an army that has already marched through one long night and back. Stannis, for his part, is no fool. He knows the cost of another war, and he has seen the dead walk. A raven from Dragonstone to Dragonstone, his old seat, her ancestral one, offers a bargain. "Serve with me against the darkness," he might say, "and I will not contest your claim to Dragonstone, nor your blood." She counters with something bolder, recognition of Targaryen rights in the east, perhaps, or a promise that her heirs will wed into the Baratheon line. Renly standing at the council table with that familiar half-smile suggests the obvious. It's a marriage pact, a Baratheon or Stark groom for the Dragon Queen, uniting claims instead of setting them at each other's throat. Here, Jon Snow's parentage becomes a sword with two edges. Revealed as Rohirjar's son and Lyanna's, he is both Stark and Targaryen, both the North's quiet hope and the proof of the old dynasty's living line. Stannis sees a potential rival to his own blood. Davos sees a bridge. Daenerys sees someone who shares both her fire and her loneliness. Could Jon be the one who makes a Targaryen Stark Baratheon settlement possible, or the spark that blows the whole careful piece apart? Because there is a darker road. Daenerys might decide that any throne not held by a dragon is stolen. She has 3 living weapons that no Westerosi army has ever faced in their full strength. Stannis has a hardened, unified host, the Stormlands, the Reach, a reconciled North, knights who have already fought whites and winter together. Dragons versus a realm that knows how to fight as one. Who breaks first when Dragonfire meets disciplined ranks and scorpions lining the city walls? On that, we agree. The details are wildly uncertain, but one truth stands. Daenerys is no longer sailing toward a fractured, illegitimate regime ripe for collapse. She is coming for a stronger, more lawful, more cohesive opponent than in canon. And the first choice she makes when she sees that reality will decide whether this new peace holds, or the realm burns all over again. Winners and losers, tallying the human cost and benefit. If Daenerys is sailing toward a stronger, more lawful opponent, who in this new story has actually won, and who has merely survived long enough to lose later? Let's explore the balance sheet of this altered realm. On the surface, the great winners are obvious. Stannis Baratheon sits the Iron Throne not as a usurper, but as the stern embodiment of the law he has always worshipped. His banners fly over King's Landing, his fleet rules Blackwater Bay, and his claim is no longer a lonely truth muttered in a grim camp, but the accepted order of the realm. He has what he always wanted, and more dangerously, what he believes he is owed. Beside him, Renly lives. That alone reshapes everything. The younger brother trades a crown of his own for a crown beside him. Hand of the king, lord of the Stormlands, darling of court and small folk alike. While he commands an army of smiles and whispered favors where Stannis commands soldiers and ships. Renly would have preferred the throne itself, but power shared is still power, and he has far more of it alive than as a ghost in a shadow's wake. With Renly comes Margaery and the Tyrells. Margaery is queen, not consort to a sadist boy king, but wife to a hard adult ruler whose rough edges she can soften in public even when she cannot move him in private. Highgarden's granaries feed the capital. Its gold oils the machinery of royal justice. The Reach does not need to betray one king to crown another. It is in from the start, and its influence grows roots instead of scrambling for purchase. North of the Neck, the Stark story is quieter, and that is precisely the point. No red wedding, no slaughter at the Twins. Robb remains a king in name for a time, then a high lord in truth, trading a crown for his family's lives and the safety of his people. The Riverlands still burn, but for months, or not years. Fewer corpses hang from trees along the Trident. Fewer small folk starve in muddy, trampled fields. There are partial winners, too. The Night's Watch receives more than empty words. Stannis and his northern allies send grain, men, and steel. Winterfell is not a ruin passed between Boltons and Ironborn, but a functioning fortress, better prepared when the dead begin to walk. Tyrion Lannister, stripped of Lannister supremacy, becomes useful rather than expendable. As a king who values blunt counsel and a brother who enjoys clever company offer him something Tywin never did: a place to serve without being the family's scapegoat. Even some Lannisters are spared their worst fates. No Joffrey on the throne means fewer public cruelties, fewer names on private kill lists. Kevin bends the knee and lives. Tommen and Myrcella grow up as hostages turned courtiers, not pieces on Cersei's desperate board. And the losers? Cersei and Joffrey lose everything. No Tyrell alliance, no Blackwater victory, no time to weave their webs. A swift Baratheon assault ends their rule and, almost certainly, their lives. Tywin dies not as the quiet power behind the boy king, But as a general outmaneuvered and cut down near the God's Eye, his legacy scattered with his army. Walder Frey never gets his bloody feast. Rose Bolton never receives a northern crown. Without the chaos of a drawn-out war, their treachery has no moment to bloom. Yet the realm itself pays a price. A shorter war means fewer banners and open rebellion, but King's Landing still starves under siege. Stannis' justice fills the dungeons as often as it empties the streets. The faith grows bolder under a king who talks of duty and sin, and the question of succession, Renly's future children, Shireen's rights, the Stormlands' pride, waits like wildfire under the city. Very well, this timeline bleeds less. More strength is preserved for the others. More innocents live to see the snows. But what if that very strength, that hard, orderly peace, only makes the next great choice harder when dragons and dead men both demand the realm's obedience? On that, we agree. Westeros never truly escapes the cost. It only chooses when to pay. Themes in play: duty, love, and the price of compromise. And this is where the story stops being about battles and starts being about what kind of men win them. Stannis Baratheon takes the Iron Throne not as the unbending iron rod of the books, but as iron that has been heated, hammered, and, reluctantly, folded. He marries Marguerite Tyrell to secure the Reach, accepts Renly as hand, and signs charters granting the North Broad autonomy it has no legal right to under the Old Order. Each parchment he seals is a tiny heresy against the pure law he once worshipped. He tells himself it is for the good of the realm. And he also knows he has crossed lines he once swore never to bend. In council, that tension shows. When a lord of the Stormlands refuses new taxes, Stannis' first instinct is simple: punish. The law is clear, he says. Renly leans back, smiling that easy court smile. The law is clear, brother, but the harvest is not. Shall we hang the drought as well? The king's jaw tightens. He does not laugh. He does, after a long pause, reduce the levy. Duty, for him, is still a blade. Yet now, it is sheathed a little more often. Renly's path bends just as far in the other direction. This is the man who once raised an army on charm and color, who thought the throne should go to whoever could make the banners dance. Here, he gives up his own crown, but not his ambition. He trades a golden antlered helm for the heavier, subtler weight of office. He brokers Shireen's betrothal, and so that the girl he once joked about as too sweet for this city becomes the beating heart of a new settlement between Baratheon, Tyrell, and North. What if the younger brother finally learns that power can serve more than his own reflection? Let's explore how the law itself starts to strain. On paper, Shireen is heir. In practice, the realm sees Marguerite as its queen, Renly as the smiling face of rule, and Robb Stark as a near-equal king in the snow. The maesters can quote precedents until their candles burn low, but how do you write down the North's right to rule itself in winter and still call it one realm? How do you honor a girl's claim while her uncle all but governs in her name? Martin's world has always asked whether love or law truly rules Westeros. Here, Marguerite's queenship is an act of love and calculation. She wins the small folk with bread and gardens, even as parchments insist their loyalty belongs to a stern Baratheon line. The North's autonomy is born from grief and respect, not from any neat statute. On that we agree. The lived reality outpaces the ink. Yet this mess prevents worse horrors. No red wedding, no riverlands drowned in fire to break a wolf king. The right choice is not Stannis triumphant and pure, nor Renly triumphant and adored, but both brothers half satisfied, half resentful, sharing a victory that tastes of compromise. Is that not more frightening in some ways than a clean, tragic fall? Because it brings us back to Martin's central question. What makes a good king? A man like Stannis, who will break himself before he breaks an oath? A man like Renly, who can make an army love him? Or is the answer this uneasy alloy, justice tempered by mercy, power checked by affection, a throne held up by hands that do not entirely trust one another? Very well. This timeline offers its own test. When dragons finally cross the narrow sea and the dead press harder on the wall, we will see whether any king of Westeros can balance those weights without shattering. Rewinding the key. Divergence. Why Renly's choice? matters so much to understand whether this alloy can bear the weight of dragons and dead, we have to rewind to the forge where it was first struck. What if that forge is nothing grander than a damp pavilion outside Storm's End, smelling of sea salt, oiled leather, and stubborn Baratheon pride? The canvas walls still ripple in the night breeze, and torches spit and crackle. Renly lounges in green and gold, all easy charm, while his brother stands rigid as a spear shaft. In canon, Renly mocks the older man's claim, smiles at Catelyn's plea, and sends Stannis back into the dark with nothing but wounded pride. Here, he does not. Here, when Catelyn says, "You are brothers, you share the same blood," Renly lets the words land. He studies Stannis' lined face, remembers a stern hand on his shoulder at Storm's End, a brother who never learned to flatter, but never failed in duty. "Very well," he says at last, the words tasting strange. "You are the elder. You have the better claim. I will back you on certain terms." It is a compromise born of calculation and, just barely, of love. Renly keeps the Stormlands. Margaery is promised the Queen's crown. Renly is named Hand, heir until Stannis has a son. The Reach Lords grumble, then count numbers. 100,000 men under one stag banner is an offer too rich to refuse. Even Stannis, jaw clenched, hears the iron in the bargain. "On that, we agree," he answers. Pride yields, but only just. From that single unlikely surrender, the dominoes fall fast. With Tyrell grain and gold, with a fleet in the Blackwater and an army on the King's Road, King's Landing is ringed in antlers before Tywin can turn his horse. There is no desperate gamble at Blackwater, no wildfire inferno, the no green tide sweeping ships to ash. Joffrey's reign ends not in triumphant sadism, but in a short, terrified walk from throne to block, while a united Baratheon host watches. Because Renly bends, there is no shadow assassin slipping under Storm's End's walls. No black smoke in the shape of a brother's face. Sir Courtenay Penrose dies in honest battle, or yields to overwhelming force, not to sorcery. The Tyrells never have cause to flee to the Lannisters' arms. Margaery weds a Baratheon king. It as planned, but this time the stag she serves is crowned by law and by strength. And in the Riverlands, with Lannister power broken early, Robb Stark is no longer a cornered wolf. Walder Frey has no Lannister-backed future to sell his knives to, no red wedding to host. The young wolf may still die in some later war, but he does not die at his uncle's feast with music playing and bread in his hands. All of this hangs on a single man choosing not to be king. That is the quiet tragedy of the original timeline. Catelyn's counsel, the obvious logic of Stannis' claim, even Renly's own stated love for his brother, all pointed toward this compromise. He could have chosen to serve and still wield immense power. He could have traded a crown of gold for one of influence. He did not. So when we follow this alternate realm forward, toward dragons, toward winter, we are not just tracking different tactics. We are tracing the absence of one fatal joke, at one careless sneer, one refusal to say, "very well," when it mattered most. In a story crowded with prophecies and portents, it is this kind of moment that quietly decides who lives, who dies, and which king, if any, is left to face the darkness beyond the wall. Alternate character arcs. Who becomes someone else entirely? If strategy and prophecy shift, what happens to the people inside them? What if the same war that once shattered every great house instead forges entirely different souls? Renly is the easiest to see first, because he is the brightest. The banners of the Reach and Stormlands still ripple in the summer wind, but their lord is no longer the laughing pretender king. In King's Landing, years later, they call him Hand. In the small council chamber, the green cloak has been traded for black and gold, the antlered helm for a simple chain of office. Renly drums his fingers on the table as petitions drone on, offering smiles instead of swords. Now he would have preferred the tourney field, the whispered praise of being the king himself, but he has discovered something sharper, the power to make enemies sit, talk, and sign. "Very well," he says when Reach and North snarl over tariffs. "You both want your sons to live to see winter's end. Start there." The realm remembers him not as a corpse in a shadow-haunted tent, but as Renly the peacemaker, the beloved, the brother who turned a divided army into a kingdom that did not eat itself. Yoan Stannis, the man who once died in snow and silence, now stands in the throne room he actually holds. The Iron Throne scrapes his back as he sits, hard and uncompromising. The king who burned no child and lost no war for vanity. His legacy is not the doomed claimant at the Blackwater, but the ruler who broke the Lannisters early, then turned his gaze, grim and unblinking, toward the Wall. When the dead come, they do not find a scattered realm. They find a king who believes every inconvenient truth, and an army that believes in him. On that we agree. Stannis needed someone to humanize his justice. Renly needed a cause greater than his own reflection. Together, they become the story of duty married to charm, law bound to mercy. Far to the west, another arc bends away from horror. Catelyn Stark never sits at a feast where the music turns to murder. Freed from the Red Wedding, she rides between Winterfell and King's Landing as a living bridge. Her Tully words, family, duty, honor, suddenly the very language of the realm. She counsels Robb when his temper flares, and Stannis when his pride bristles. "You are both kings," she tells them in a quiet solar. "Act like fathers." Then, a pattern interrupt. The dwarf who once killed his own father at a privy now signs decrees beside a Baratheon banner. Tyrion, traded as a hostage and then kept as an advisor, discovers what his mind can do when it is not chained to Joffrey's cruelty or Tywin's scorn. He reforms port taxes, reins in corrupt officials, and builds granaries for the coming winter. Renly jokes, Stannis scowls, Tyrion drinks a little less and writes a great deal more. If these four can become something else, who can't? Let's explore that. Does Sansa grow into a southern queen under a just Baratheon court instead of a Lannister plaything? Does Arya ever sail for Braavos? Or does a more stable north call her home to serve as its sharp-edged conscience? Does Brienne, sworn to brothers who finally deserve her, become the realm's truest knight rather than a wandering oath with no place? The throne has not moved, but every path leading to it has. As this alternate realm marches toward winter, the question is no longer only who wins, but who they become on the way. Could it really happen? Testing the plausibility. So, could any of this truly have happened? Or are we asking Stannis Baratheon to wake up one morning as a different man entirely? What if this branch of the story isn't fantasy at all, but simply the road not taken at Storm's End? Let's explore how close the canon already brings us. Renly first. In the books, he is proud, yes, and hungry for the throne. He likes the green cloak, the cheers, the idea of being the king everyone prefers. But he is not foolish. He builds his power the careful way, marrying Margaery, courting the Reach, choosing the Stormlands because they are secure. This is a man who can count. If his brother arrives with proof of Joffrey's bastardy and an offer that keeps Renly as heir, hand, and Lord of Storm's End, does he truly refuse out of sheer vanity? Or does he see that serving as the smiling face on Stannis' iron claim could give him most of what he wants anyway? In canon, his fatal flaw is timing and overconfidence, not an inability to compromise. If he dismisses Stannis because he believes his own army, his Tyrell allies, and his charm make him untouchable. Shift the mood of that parley slightly. Fewer barbs from Stannis, one better prepared argument from Davos, a reminder that Tywin is already moving, and Renly's pragmatism suddenly has something solid to grasp. Then there is Stannis, who insists he never bends. Yet he marries his cause to Melisandre's fire, raises a smuggler to lordship, and later accepts northern clans, wildlings, and even a bastard of Winterfell into his orbit. For a man of law, these are enormous compromises. Would he set Selyse aside at Renly's urging? That is the hardest stretch. But when his army is small, his coffers thin, and the realm crumbling, could he stomach a political separation that leaves Selyse queen in name while Margaery fills the role in practice? It is not comfortable, but desperation has already driven him across stranger lines. The Tyrells, by contrast, are almost too easy. Thus their loyalty in canon flips from Renly to Joffrey in a heartbeat once advantage demands it. Offering Margaery a crown beside the rightful Baratheon king, with Renly still powerful as Hand and Stormlands lord, is exactly the kind of bargain Olenna and Mace would seize. They never loved Renly the man. They loved Renly the latter. The real improbabilities lie in public theater. Stannis must appear to demote his own queen and muddy Shireen's path. Renly must kneel openly. On before the brother, he mocked. Both men would taste ash in their mouths, yet each has swallowed smaller prides already. On that, we agree. This is not the likeliest branch, but it is not impossible. Shift a few words at Storm's End, a single night's council, and the realm could have watched two brothers ride out beneath one crowned stag. The next question is simple. Once united, how far could that army of chance really carry them? Also, from page to screen, how this what if would look on HBO. On screen, that army of chance becomes an army of banners. We open at Storm's End again. The waters around the castle are crisp and choppy, gray light on gray stone, but this time the air feels thinner, expectant. The parley tent is smaller, tighter, lanterns throwing sharp shadows on two brothers who have run out of road. Renly lounges in green and gold. Stannis stands rigid in plain leather and steel. The dialogue is lean. Or your claim is better, Renly concedes, almost bored. My army is bigger. Stannis does not smile. Then serve your king. There is a beat. Renly's eyes flick to Brienne, to Loras, to the Tyrell lords beyond the canvas. He drops to one knee in a single fluid motion. The camera cuts wide. The Kingsguard hand tightens on a sword hilt. Bannermen murmur. Then a close-up on Stannis, caught between triumph and disbelief, as he lays a stiff hand on Renly's shoulder. And pattern interrupt. Instead of a shadow, we cut to Melisandre outside, red hair whipped by the wind, face utterly unreadable as she looks toward the castle walls. No black shape slips under the canvas. No candle gutters out. What if the horror simply never comes? From there, the siege of King's Landing is not one night of wildfire, but a season-long, tightening noose. Let's explore how that looks. Sweeping crane shots show Tyrell roses and crowned stags ringing the city. Awney camps stretching from the Blackwater to the King's Road. Inside the walls, we linger on empty grain stores, on small folk queuing at the Sept, on Joffrey snapping at Cersei while distant drums beat. Each episode, the army edges closer. Siege towers rise, night sorties clash in torchlight along the riverbanks. Instead of a single explosion on the water, the battle becomes psychological. Stannis' discipline and Renly's pageantry grinding the Lannisters down day by day. Yet when the throne finally falls, the coronation that follows is not what the show gave us. In the Great Hall, Stannis sits the Iron Throne, jaw clenched, crown too heavy. At his side, Margaery Tyrell stands newly crowned, warm smile softening the hard lines of the court. The camera plays the contrast, her hand light on his arm, his eyes flicking to it as if it were a gauntlet instead of a comfort. We cut to Selyse in the crowd, lips pressed thin, and to Shireen craning for a better view, shy pride on her face. You have your queen, Renly might murmur behind the throne, and you have your Stormlands. On that, we agree, Stannis replies, though his gaze never leaves the hall. Far away, another hall. A dim, smoky chamber in River Run, or at a riverside inn. Robb Stark faces Stannis' envoys across a rough-hewn table. No music, no crossbows, only parchment and steel. The North remembers its dead, Robb says. Why should we bend the knee to another southern king? Davos answers plainly, because this king has already broken the Lannisters, and he offers you justice, not chains. The words Red Wedding are never spoken, because that future has bled out on some other branch of the tree. Instead, the tension is quieter, coiled around pride and duty. Does Robb accept? Does he walk away and risk the realm for his crown? By the end of this hypothetical season, if the War of the Five Kings is not a raging storm, but a receding one, Tywin is dead or in chains, Joffrey deposed, the Iron Throne held by a Baratheon who actually earned it. The closing montage shifts our focus. A darker, longer winter, ravens winging north, dragonglass in black-gloved hands. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys' dragons wheel over Meereen, their shadows longer, their queen listening to tales of a hard, cold king and his southern queen. The later seasons would pivot, but less time spent on the petty rivalries, more on the long night, and on a clash not between conqueror and usurper, but between a weary, lawful king and a liberator with fire at her back. Very well then. If the Game of Thrones ends early, what happens when ice and fire finally meet? Pulling back. What this tells us about power in Westeros. If ice and fire are set on a collision course, what does this quieter, earlier end to the Game of Thrones actually tell us about power in Westeros? Let's explore what sits underneath all these marching armies and shifting banners. Strip away the banners, and this whole scenario balances on something painfully small: pride. Renly's pride in his charm and his vast army. Stannis' pride in his lawful claim and unbending sense of justice. In canon, those two prides grind against each other until one brother dies in the dark outside Storm's End. Here, one of them swallows it. The realm lives or dies not because of prophecy or destiny, but because one man finally says, "Very well," and means it. Think of how many horrors hang on similar refusals. The Red Wedding only happens because Robb Stark will not bend the knee again, and because Walder Frey will not forgive a slight. The Riverlands burn because Tywin will not accept defeat and turns to terror instead. Joffrey sits the throne and laughs while small folk starve, because no one at court is willing to admit, openly, that his claim is a lie. How many broken bodies on the Trident and in the Twins are simply the cost of men refusing to recognize each other's legitimacy? In this what if, that pattern breaks at Storm's End. Renly chooses to serve, not to seize. He keeps the Stormlands, keeps his Tyrell allies, but he puts his brother's rights above his own crown. It is not romantic, it is not the sort of moment singers love, yet that single unglamorous choice spares the Reach from famine, the Riverlands from years of raiding, May and the North from being abandoned while the South tears itself apart. Martin's story has always hinted that the good outcomes are rarely the glorious ones. They are the compromises, Ned agreeing to confess, Robb agreeing to marry where it is wise, not where his heart leads, Stannis in this timeline agreeing to share power with a smiling younger brother he barely understands. On that, we agree. The realm is saved not by the sharpest sword, but by the bitterest swallowed pride. And what if moments like this do something else too? They make the canon feel fragile. You see how easily it could have gone another way if one conversation in a cold, drafty hall had ended with a different word. If Renly bends, there is no Blackwater as we know it, no Red Wedding, no Lannister-Tyrell alliance sealed over a dead king's memory. And that brings us back to our first question. What if the War of the Five Kings ended before it truly began? Because a younger brother chose blood over a crown, we've seen what that choice might win. Next, we'll see what it might still cost. Answering the question, who wins in this Renly for Stannis world? So, when the dust settles on this quieter War of the Five Kings, who actually wins? What if we step back from the battles and banners and just look at the shape of the realm this choice creates? Picture the throne room in the Red Keep. The stag and crowned hart share the walls with golden roses. Stannis Baratheon sits the iron throne at last, jaw tight, fingers clenched on the arms of the chair. Beside him, Margaery Tyrell wears her third crown in half. The time, but this one is secure, rooted not in Joffrey's whim, but in a hard bargain struck at Storm's End. Before them stands Renly, not in green plate, but in sober black and gold, the hands pinned at his breast like a private joke he and his brother never speak aloud. The Tyrells are no longer latecomers swooping in to rescue Lannisters. They are entrenched from the first year of the new king's reign, their army fed by the Reach, their coin greasing the capital's wheels. The North is battered by Ironborn raids but largely intact. Its lord, whether Robb or a Stark regent, bound to the throne by shared victory over the Greyjoys instead of a Frey wedding feast. The Lannisters are broken in the field and humbled at court, reduced but not erased. In their gold and their grudges both carefully watched. On paper, the realm is stronger than in canon. There is one Baratheon king instead of a boy tyrant. Law is clearer. The bastard lie is burned away in the first year, not whispered about for 3. The Crown's army is larger, drilled by Stannis' discipline and fed by Tyrell granaries. The Night's Watch sends ravens south, and this time they land in a court where Davos, Renly, and even Margaery can say, "Listen," and be heard. And then let's explore what that means when the dead begin to walk. Does this Westeros still bleed? Of course. Stannis allows Melisandre to serve his cause. Some burnings still happen in dark courtyards. and more than one lord mutters that this king's justice feels like cold iron. Renly's easy charm oils the gears of rule, but it also papers over real fractures. Who inherits after Stannis and Margaery if Shireen's health fails or politics turn? A Baratheon Tyrell child? A Stormlands prince? And another war of claims waiting to hatch. Yet compared to wildfire on the Blackwater and music at the Twins, the ledger tilts toward mercy. Fewer senseless massacres. No red wedding. No sack of King's Landing by unpaid sellswords. Governance is coherent. A king who cares for law, a hand who understands people, a queen whose family can actually feed the realm through winter. Still, the dangers do not vanish. Tyrell ambition coils behind every courteous smile. Lannister resentment simmers in Casterly Rock's halls. Melisandre's zeal sharpens whenever the sky reddens at dusk. And above all of them, dragons and others move according to their own designs, deaf to oaths sworn in the throne room. So the verdict? In this Renly for Stannis world, Westeros probably suffers less and survives more. If these unlikely allies can keep their fragile union from cracking when the dead and the dragons finally arrive. On that, we agree, the true test of this better realm is still to come. Your turn in the game. Choose your king and next what if. So we end where we began, in that cramped tent outside Storm's End, with two brothers and one impossible choice. In our answer to that choice, Renly sheathed his sword, bent the knee, and backed Stannis' hard, lawful claim. From that single, very well, the War of the Five Kings twisted into something faster, cleaner, almost merciful by Westerosi standards. The Baratheon banners did not face one another across a field of roses and antlers. They marched side by side. Renly's golden host and Tyrell allies swelled Stannis' lean, disciplined army into a hammer too heavy for the Lannisters to lift. King's Landing fell before Tywin could offer rescue. The Tyrells never warmed Cersei's bed with their loyalty, and the realm bled less than it did in canon. No wildfire on the Blackwater, no desperate gamble for the throne, just a lawful king. A charming heir, and a capital taken by storm instead of by fire. But now, the game is yours. In this world, if you had to serve one man, whose reign would you choose to live under? Stannis' cold justice, where the law is a sword that does not care whose neck it bites, or Renly's easy charm, where smiles and tourneys smooth over quiet cruelties? Or does this alliance give you the best of both, a stern king with a golden-hearted brother to soften him? Or the worst of both? That's where no one is left to say no when they are united. Let's explore your judgment. When Stannis sits the Iron Throne with Renly at his side, what should become of those who lost the war? Should Tyrion Lannister hang for his name, or be spared for his mind and set to serve as master of coin or even hand? How should this new king treat the North? Demand Robb Stark's crown, or recognize northern pride and weave a slower, surer peace? And if you held that cold metal beneath you, what if the choice of Cersei and Joffrey's fate were yours? Exile, trial, the headsman's sword, or some more fitting irony? Tell this story in the comments. Argue your sentence for Tyrion. Draft your terms for the North. Decide whether Joffrey dies a king, a prisoner, or a nameless brother of the Night's Watch. Then, choose our next road. Do we stay on the Blackwater and ask what happens if Stannis truly wins there? Or if Tyrion's wildfire burns his fleet to ash but Tywin never arrives? Do we return to the first book and let Ned Stark live, watching how one honorable man surviving in King's Landing warps every alliance? Or do we sail east and imagine a Daenerys who lands in Westeros years earlier, with dragons small but armies unbroken? Leave your what if for the next realm we visit, because in the end, everything we've seen here began with a single word in a single tent. One brother said yes instead of no, and the fate of Westeros bent around that choice. There are 100 other tents, 1,000 other crossroads, and we will be here to walk them with you, one impossible decision at a time.